might be one taken by us.
Yeah,
I think he is. I don't like that. Yeah. Everyone knows that. Yeah. But I'm not crazy enough to do this. I thought you yeah, but I can have calculation.
Yeah, oh yeah, you won't know till it's time to
Yeah.
pay the money, put your name on.
Yeah.
Then you can put your name on for living.
I'm worried about the 20 grand.
Good evening, welcome to the San Dimas City Council meeting for Tuesday, July 13th. There will be a designated area in the lobby to accommodate members of the public who do not wish to be... Sorry. There will be a designated area in the lobby to accommodate members of the public who do not wish to be seated in the council chambers and desire to remain masked and socially distanced regardless of the vaccination status. Temporary accommodation due to COVID. As a standing accommodation to ensure participation of those who have sensitivities or other risk conditions, the city will offer a nearby alternative location where individuals who desire to participate at the council meetings and would desire to wear masks, maintain 6 feet of social distancing, and ensure those around them are also similarly protected, regardless of the vaccination status, may watch the meeting. Such individuals will be allowed to remain in the area only if they comply with these requirements. To participate in oral communications, such individuals will be called, can proceed to the public speaking podium to address the city council, and are able to return to a fully masked and socially distanced location with minimal exposure to any unmasked individuals. Madam City Clerk, would you please read the roll due to the fact we're missing a member?
Councilmember Ebner,
Here.
Councilmember Vienna,
Present.
Councilmember Bertone,
Here.
Mayor Bedar.
Here.
Councilmember Weber is absent.
Thank you. Councilman Weber is out of the state due to a work obligation. Okay. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight, we're going to have two closed session items that, due to the absence of a council member, the performance evaluation of the city manager and labor negotiations item will be tabled to the council meeting on July 27th. Is there any opposition to this? Hearing none. We'll go to recognitions. Declare July Parks Makes Life Better Month.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Scott Wasserman, the Director of Parks and Recreation. I've completed my first month here in San Dimas, and for this occasion, staff really wanted me to come up and convey how much we just want to welcome the community back into our parks and into our programs. As you know, we've been closed for about a year due to COVID, and we shut everything down. I think we had to furlough some staff. We've been able to bring everything back online. And there are just a lot of great amenities, a lot of great opportunities and experiences for the residents of San Dimas to enjoy. So on this day, across the country, cities celebrate Parks and Recreation Month, and I'd like to do so here in San Dimas just by welcoming everyone back into our programs, and our staff just can't wait to see everyone again. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I've been asked to read this proclamation. Please be patient. The print is much smaller than I normally can see. It's like this big. So, but I mean it wholeheartedly. I'm very proud to have a chance to read it. Whereas parks and recreations make lives and the communities better now and in the future, and whereas it is established through statewide public opinion research, 98% of California households visit the local parks at least once a year. 2 in 3 households visit parks once a month. 50% of households participate in an organized recreation program, and most parks use is with families and friends. And whereas residents value recreation as it provides positive alternatives for their children and youth to reduce crime and mischief, especially during non-school hours. It promotes the arts, it increases social connections, aids in therapy, and promotes lifelong learning. And whereas residents value their parks and for access to outdoor spaces for children and adults to play and be active, exercise, and group sports. And whereas hereas parks provide access to the serenity and the inspiration of nature, outdoor spaces, as well as preserve and protect the historic, natural, and cultural resources in the community. And whereas the residents in San Dimas, including children, youth, families, adults, seniors, businesses, community organizations, and visitors benefit from the wide range of parks, trails, and open space, sports fields, tennis courts, facilities including the San Dimas Recreation Center, the Senior Center, the Villa Verde Park, Lone Hill Park, Marchand Park, Horse Thief Canyon Park, and programs including swim lessons, recreation classes, Shooting Stars dance team, teen programs, senior citizens programs, youth basketball, tiny tots, and family campouts, and special events including the annual 5K run and the Halloween Spooktacular, Arbor Day, Browser Bash, Holiday Extravaganza, Family Festival, and the Easter egg hunts. And whereas the San Dimas City Council urges all residents to recognize that parks and recreation enriches the lives of its residents and visitors, as well as adding value to the communities, homes, and neighborhoods. And whereas July is celebrated across the nation as Parks and Recreation Month, now therefore I, Emmett G. Badar, Mayor Pro Tem Eric Weber, Councilman Dennis Bertone, John Ebner, and Ryan A. Vienna hereby proclaim July 2021 as Parks Makes Life Better Month, and in doing so urges all citizens to use and enjoy its parks, trails, open space facilities, and recreation opportunities. In witness thereof, I, Emmett G. Badar, hereon set my hand and cause this seal of the City of San Dimas to be affixed this 13th day of July 2021. Thank you. Thanks to Parks and Rec. As everyone knows, our parks people are very dedicated, and the people on our Parks and Rec Commission are dedicated people, and it's very nice. And Scott, welcome. As we've said before, you got a heck of a crew, and we think we have a heck of a leader. So thank you very much, and congratulations to our community for having a better place to live based on the fact that everybody knows it's a better place to live, and we have some great parks. Okay. Okay, it says city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to take the ability to do part of my city manager update up front to accommodate a request by the council to have a presentation at the beginning of the meeting on the My San Dimas application. At the meeting of June 22nd, we introduced My San Dimas, which is a new a customer service application that we were rolling out the following day, which was the 23rd of June. And the request from the council was that we come and do a presentation as we did then at the beginning, because of the late hour. Many who are online and watching may not have an opportunity to see the application and become familiar with it. So with it, I will turn it over to Mr. John Lee to introduce how we got here and then to show the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. City Council, staff, and members of the community, I'd like to again introduce our GoGov team, Kimberly Nustis and Hilly Sabaja, who will be demonstrating the My San Dimas app.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and the citizens of San Dimas. We're here to give a demonstration on our new My San Dimas app, and we're going to teach you today how to download the app from the App Store, and then how to make a request using the app. So first, what we're going to do is, So first, what we're going to do is we're going to locate our App Store. For Android users, that's typically Google Play. For Apple users, that would be the Apple App Store. I'm mirroring my screen, so I apologize if I'm looking down a lot, because I'm going to be actually doing a live demonstration, and hopefully people in the audience or watching today can follow along and download the app themselves. So go ahead, and what you're going to do is open the App Store. Locate your search feature, and in that feature, type in My San Dimas. As you can see, the app came right up. It has our city logo, so you can verify you're on the right one. I'm going to go ahead and click the cloud, or it might say download. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to do a demonstration making a request for some trash that I had seen this morning on my way to work. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the steps on how to make a request for that. Once you can open the app, go ahead and click open. The first thing it's going to ask you if you want to allow for notifications. We actually recommend that you do allow for those, because part of this program is our communication with the customers. And when you submit a request, you're going to get an answer back as to what action took place or when the item was closed and fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and allow. As you can see here, there's several categories that you can use and look up. It actually takes you to our city website where there's more information on each of these topics. For today's demonstration, I'm going to click Start Request. For first-time users, you're going to go ahead and click Sign Up. Here you see it's fairly simple. You put your first name, last name, email address, and a password. The password has no requirements, so you can use anything you'd like. I have a login already, so I'm going to go ahead and back out, and I'm going to click Login. I'm going to enter my email address. And then I'm going to enter my password. And click Sign In. When you first log into the app, you're going to be looking at a list of various topics. Some of them are frequently asked questions, and they'll be designated with an FAQ to the right of the topic. And then the ones that don't have the FAQ are topics that you can click on to go ahead and submit requests for. You can go ahead and scroll through here. So today I'm going to be reporting some trash that I saw. And you can try to look for your topic. Or at the very top, there's a search feature. So I'm going to type in trash. As you can see here, there's some options that come up. But at the very bottom is trash and debris on streets or public property. I actually saw the trash in the street this morning, so I'm going to go ahead and select that one. It gives you a little bit of information about the topic, and then you can go ahead and click Make Request. This is your chance to go ahead and upload photos. So if I was walking and saw it right now, I can go ahead and select Camera. Make sure you allow for the app to access the camera. And I'm going to take a picture of the debris that I saw. And then click Use Photo. The other way you can upload pictures is you can click on Photo Library. Again, you have to allow access to your photo library. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select a couple more pictures to go ahead and add to this request. As you can see here, the photos have uploaded. I don't have any more photos to share, so I'm going to go ahead and click No More Photos. So this is the information part where you fill in the location and description. If you allowed for the app to check your location, it will automatically enter an address of where you're at. If it's not the correct address, you can click in the box and you can change it either manually at the top, or there's a little black pin above the blue button, and you can drag that pin around until you find the address that you're looking for. In this case, the address is correct, so I'm going to click Done. The description is going to be trash in street. And you're welcome to add more if you want to there, but for the sake of this, I'll just be quick. The time of the incident, when you click that, you get a clock. The first thing you do is you move the hours, so it was 7 o'clock, and the second one is the minutes, 7:16, and I'm going to say that was in the morning, and click OK. The date of the incident was actually yesterday, so I'm going to select yesterday. And then since I have a login, my contact info is already there, and I'm going to click Submit Request. As you can see here, you get a request number, but the wonderful thing about this is you don't have to remember that request number. What you do is you can click Got It, and you get back to the main screen. At the very top left-hand corner, you see 3 white lines. If you click on that, there's a Track Requests option, and if you click that, there's your requests. So it'll show you all your past requests you made. Okay, so we actually got a notification already that the request we just submitted has been closed. So this is what the option is for allowing notifications, is you can get these things to see when the issue's been resolved or if an action's been taken. I want to find out a little bit more detail about this, so I'm going to hit View, and it's going to take me to the request. You're going to see that it was closed, and it was closed on July 13th, and there's a little blurb there that says, "Thank you for using the My San Dimas app. The trash and debris has been picked up and the ticket's now closed." So you can be assured that the issue was taken care of. You can go out and take a look again if you'd like. And that's the end of using the app. So that's for making a request. If you don't have a smartphone, we do have the option available on our city website. Let me just turn this off real quick. So here at our city website at sandimasca.gov, this is our homepage. If you look in the beige area here, all the way to the right, it says My San Dimas. You can go ahead and click there. This takes you to the homepage of My San Dimas, and you can read information. We do want to reiterate that this is not a 24/7 request service, so if you do have an emergency, please call 911. Otherwise, you could click on Browse Knowledge Base. And here again are the list of topics that we just saw on our phone. And you can go ahead and submit items here. There's one more feature that we have available. It was suggested by Mr. Ebner that we set up a tutorial for downloading and using the app, so we did that. Under City News, which is just if you scroll down a little bit here, you'll see that you can scroll and up comes My San Dimas app tutorial. So once you click there, there is a YouTube video, and it'll teach you step by step. It does have sound as well, but we have it turned off for this presentation. And it'll show you step by step on how to download the app and make a request.
And the My San Dimas app was launched about 3 weeks ago on June 23rd, and since then we've had the opportunity to promote it through street banners, notifications, the website, flyers, but also on 2 farmer markets events and music in the park. And as of last Friday, we had over almost 400 downloads. And hopefully after today, the citizens of San Dimas would know about this and get it and use it. Thank you.
And if you have any questions about the app at this time, we'd be happy to answer them for you.
Any comments?
Good presentation. Good app.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you
Thanks a
very
lot.
much.
Thank you so much, and residents, please go and download the app and help us out. Thanks.
Just a comment that within the last hour, I was taken out to make sure that I knew how to use it. So tomorrow morning when the staff reviews it, and I've asked them to water the community park because it's yellow, just understand, I was instructed to do that. And the sign that needs to be painted, I was also instructed to do that. But it's coming from me, so take it for what it's worth. I doubt that it's going to get painted because I didn't think it needed painting. So they just ran me through a couple of tests, and so I think most of the community who's had the opportunity to use it is saying thank you very much to the staff. I think it's money well spent, and I believe that we're going to be the better for it. But thank you very much for all the work you've done, John, and your staff. And well, it's kind of funny saying John and his staff, but his crew's pretty doggone good, the IT guys. So, okay, we'll go to oral communications. Members of the audience are invited to address the City Council on any item on this agenda or not on this agenda. Public comments will not be taken during each individual agenda item, except for the public hearing items. Comments on public hearing items will be heard when that item is scheduled for discussion. Under the provisions of the Brown Act, the legislative body is prohibited from engaging in discussions on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. However, your concerns may be referred to a staff or set for discussion at a later date. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Madam City Clerk, do you have?
Mayor, I've been given 2 speaker cards for items not on the agenda. The first is from Gary Enderly, and the topic is administrative leaves.
Good evening. I know you have a lot going on dealing with the gold line and the housing element, but there is one thing that I have on my radar that still needs to be addressed. That being the administrative leave of 2 employees back in October of 2020. I feel sorry for the current city manager that has to deal with all this that happened before he got here. First of all, it's my understanding that one of these individuals has resigned and filed a claim against the city, which was denied. I guess the next step for him is to file a wrongful termination lawsuit against the city, which most likely will be coming soon. The other employee is still on administrative leave almost 9.5 months. This just blows my mind. I have never heard of someone being on leave for that long and not come up with a conclusion. During that time, he's received approximately $122,000 in salary and benefits of taxpayers' money. This does not include the attorney fees or investigation fees or the cost of staff time. This is just ridiculous. I'm guessing he didn't deserve to be put on administrative leave because he didn't do anything wrong. Otherwise, he would have been terminated by now. I see another wrongful death coming soon. Let's talk about the human side of this. Here's a guy that is most likely stressed out, can't get another job because he may be blackballed because of this matter. What are we doing here is ruining his life and his future. I ask you, is this fair? Between the 2 of them, I'll take a rough guess that you have spent over $250,000 of our city money, our city tax money. I know you won't speak about personnel matters, but did any of you know about this cost? Something needs to be done. This would never happen in the private sector because it's their money, and at the city level, it's the taxpayers' money. I feel that this is something every taxpayer in San Dimas should be concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Sean C. On miscellaneous topics. And it looks like he's not here.
Was it possible that he's sitting out in the section outside?
I actually thought I saw him walking across the plaza just before the meeting started, so I don't know if he had to leave.
No? All right, we move on.
And unless there are any other members in the audience who wish to speak, those are all the speaker cards that have been turned in.
Sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Dave Milbrand. I've been here a few times, and so some of you should know my face. I want to talk about a couple of matters, and I'll make them fairly quick. First off, I want to thank the City Council for empowering city staff to help out with the parking permit situation in our neighborhood where we are. We worked for the things for several years, and we're coming to a conclusion in that process. Traffic Safety Committee is looking at our final petition proposal, which has received the required number of signatures. We're very thankful for that. Hopefully either in late July or early August when this comes before you, we'd encourage you to consider and approve that, as it's something we've needed for quite some time, and we appreciate again your assistance. Secondarily, a few weeks back, we had a situation where we had a number of power outages in our area in a 2-week period. We had 4 or 5 of those, and I completely understand that we are private consumers of Edison here, but at a city level, if we're having a variety of these power outages, we had hoped the city might be able to advocate on our behalf, or at least mention to the power providers that these kind of unplanned power outages are an inconvenience for the residents of the city. Just as an advocate, we'd appreciate that. Third matter is much more personal. In addition to being a government teacher in this town, I'm also a part-time author, and I have a new book coming out. So I have a book signing coming up at Butter Cafe and Bakery on July 24th. Come out, get some lunch from 11 to 2, and perhaps buy a book if you can. So we'd appreciate that. Thank you, City Council, for what you do, and looking forward to coming back and encourage you on a few other matters. So have a great day, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Yes, sir. So I'm Dan Daniel, live up
Hi,
at
Dan.
High School. You guys, again, should know who I am. I've been here a couple times. Just want to talk about a couple different random things. The cameras, first of all. I know you're going to talk about it later on today, but if we could, can we maybe get cameras added at more parks? We kind of need to take our parks back. They've become a mess. I have a park near my house, of course. I've had to clean up glass and cans and bottles that got graffitied last night. And even if we don't have real cameras, but maybe we have some dummy cameras in some and some working cameras in other parks so they don't know which ones are live and which ones aren't, would help quite a bit. I have talked to the sheriffs. They're going to send out more patrols, so they're on top of that for sure.
Super.
Also, the city app, I somehow, not sure how, actually used it on June 10th and got my problem resolved in less than 12 hours. So it absolutely worked amazingly well and was incredibly responsive. Not sure how I used it on June 10th, but I did. So it worked right there. And that's about it. It's nice actually coming back and seeing you guys in person without masks on. So that's all I got for you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, anyone else like to speak to the council? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless a member of the City Council requests separate discussion.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4 and 1 abstention. Right?
Just absence.
Absence, okay. All right. Okay, we're going to go into our public hearings. First off is a discussion of consideration to adopt a citywide fee schedule. Staff?
Thank you. I'll introduce Mr. Michael O'Brien. In regards to our fee schedule, our primary goal was to consolidate all fees from different schedules into one schedule in preparation for a fee study that the council had funded in the 2021-22 budget. After the presentation of Mr. O'Brien, we need to open up the public hearing, hear testimony from the public, and then close the public hearing, and then take action on the schedule.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Michael O'Brien, Administrative Services Director. For your consideration this evening, staff recommends approval of Resolution 2021-44, adopting and amending a city fee schedule with the following edit. Please note to the first sentence of Section 7, automatic annual cost of living fee increases, to read as follows. All fees set forth in the attached exhibit of this resolution shall be increased by the Consumer Price Index, CPI, on July 1st of each year, provided the proposed CPI increase is necessary to provide the costs of providing the service for which the fee is charged. And then this is the edit, and is increased as provided by law. So we just want to make sure that was noted in the resolution. The purpose of this resolution is to establish a consolidated master fee schedule, along with designating each fee within one of three categories that distinguishes whether that fee should be full cost recovery, whether the fee should be subsidized by the general taxpayer due to the nature of the program associated with the fee, and finally, if the fee is associated with a penalty or fine. In the proposed consolidated master fee schedule, all fees are designated as Category 1, with penalties and fines designated as Category 3. The classification makes clear the intent of the fees. In the case of Category 1 fees and regular fee studies, any such fee does not exceed actual costs nor provides a general taxpayer subsidy for activity benefiting specific individuals. When designated fees Category 2, the city explicitly establishes the public interest benefit and subsidy amount for fees which are not cost recovery. Later this year, staff will be conducting a fee study to determine the cost recovery for our programs and services, at which time staff will bring back a fee schedule with the proposed fees that would be required to retain full cost recovery, at which time staff will work with council to determine which fees will be best served as Category 2 fees to be subsidized by the general taxpayer. The proposed consolidated master fee schedule before you tonight does not amend any of the current fees, with the exception of the following. Establishing a convenience fee at a rate of 2.36% in order for the city to recoup the costs associated with credit card processing fees. The 2.36% rate ties directly to the average cost of processing fees from our merchant service provider and the customer's individual credit card fees over the 2020 calendar year. This rate does not include any escalators for staff time of processing or reconciling credit card activity. It is strictly related to the charges assessed to the city for processing credit card transactions at the counter online. Business license fees are recommended to be increased by the most recent annual March to March CPI, which would be 2.2%, which is anticipated to generate additional revenue from business license collections in the amount of $10,890. Due to the pandemic and the effect the state and county lockdowns had on our local businesses' ability to operate, staff did not recommend a 2021 fiscal year CPI increase, which may have resulted in an increase of 1.9% had it been taken to council for consideration and approved. Because it was not taken to council during that year, the CPI increase may never be recovered, as we are limited by the current March to March CPI for increases, and we may not seek to increase the fees by any more than that of a given year. Due to the compounding differences between what we would be collecting this year had we approved the 1.9% and what we could be collecting this year, assuming the 2.2% CPI increase is approved, would be as a difference of approximately $9,600. If the 2.2% increase is not approved, then the net effect of multiple years of skipping the CPI increase is approximately $2,500. And each year, the amount of lost revenue grows because that increase is not there to be compounded against subsequent year increases. As an example, since fiscal year 2016-17, the city has approved a 1.7, 2.7, 3.8, and 2.7% increases. Had the city not approved any of these increases, along with not approving tonight's recommended increase, the city would be looking at business license revenues that would total approximately $444,500, a difference of over $61,000, less than what the projected amount of $505,890 would be for this current fiscal year. In preparation for this meeting, staff analyzed where other business license fees stood against a number of other cities, which included Walnut, Doherty, Covina, Laverne, Glendora, Monrovia, Claremont, Arcadia, Azusa, West Covina, and Pomona, in order to compare not only revenue generation, but also fee structure, mainly from cities of a similar population size and demographic, but also a couple of larger neighboring cities to see how their fee structures compared with ours. When comparing the city's pre-pandemic 2018-19 reported actuals, which were taken from each city's 2020-21 budgets, the revenue ranges were between $121,447 and over $3.7 million, the lowest being the city of Walnut and the highest being the city of Pomona. The city of San Dimas, whose 2018-19 actuals were $481,438, were the fifth highest total of that listed ahead of Walnut, Doherty, Covina, and Laverne. The cities with higher revenues were Glendora, Monrovia, Claremont, Arcadia, Azusa, West Covina, and Pomona. It is worth noting that the cities of Covina, Doherty, and Laverne have each passed a sales tax measure, which increased their sales tax rate to 10.25%, compared to the 9.5% rate charged in San Dimas. Along with that, those cities, the cities of Glendora, Pomona, and Azusa, who also collect more license fees than the city does, also approved the sales tax measure going to 10.25%. The cities of Azusa, Glendora, Laverne, Pomona, and Claremont were based on a gross receipts calculation, which only Laverne had lower revenues than San Dimas. The cities of Walnut, Doherty, Covina, Arcadia, Monrovia, and West Covina charges are based on a number of employees and flat fee, which is what we do in the city of San Dimas. Of the 6 cities that charge per employee, the cities of Walnut and Covina had both a lower flat fee and a lower charge per employee than the city of San Dimas. The cities of Arcadia and Pomona had a lower flat fee, but the per employee charge was $6 and $9 more respectively. Monrovia and Doherty charged over $20 more of a flat fee, while the cost per employee is subsequently 50 cents less for the city of Doherty than compared to us, but the city of Monrovia was an additional $4.50. In total, comparison between rates and revenues compared to the 11 other cities listed before, the city of San Dimas continues to fall within the median, even if the proposed increases tonight are approved. Lastly, the proposed fee schedule recommends eliminating the various pool rental fees for private and nonprofit entities and instead making a uniform pool rental fee of $70, which is the currently established pool rental fee for general use. This change is estimated to create an additional $22,000 in revenue. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions?
This is an easy question. All our fees are going to be raised 2.2%.
Not all our fees, just the business license fees.
Sorry, what?
Just the business license fees.
Business license fees. And then you're going to do a study in the future, and then you're going to come back to us to tell us if this is too high or too low, or whether we have to lower it or raise it, or?
What we'll be bringing forward is an evaluation of what the true cost of each type of service and activity. And based on the policy of designating them here as Category 1, we would be proposing those fees be set, both increased and decreased, to what the true cost is. And then the council can have the conversation and discussion, where do we see benefits in terms of subsidizing or providing a taxpayer subsidy on some of those activities, like, for example, committed to taking some of those fees regarding seniors to the Senior Commission to get input on their thoughts about the impact of those fees on those services, to make a recommendation to the council what action you should take.
I agree with your procedure that you're doing. I think that's probably long overdue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing matter. I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this matter, please come forward and please state your name for the record, please. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
I'm in favor of the fee schedule. As was mentioned by Michael, the business license fees are increasing by that 2.2% cost of living over last year. And there's a huge list of all the fees, but as a top example in our packet anyway, just on the report, is like a home occupancy report. There's a business license fee for that. It's currently $139.20. With the increase, it'll be $142.20, so an increase of $3 compared to last year. The other fees, like building and safety, they're based on an LA County fee structure, and so they aren't changing, at least at this time. All the other kinds of fees, rentals of facilities, programs, things like that aren't changing. So all in all, I think it's a good fee structure. It's good to be all in one place. I like that, although the writing's kind of tiny, but that's okay. And so I'm in favor of it.
Is that a motion?
Well, I'd wait for other comments. I don't know. Ryan, do you have any? Then I would move approval of the fee schedule as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 4-4 and 1 absent. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, which is a public hearing, discussion, and consideration of approval of the following application request for the property located at 299 Foothill Boulevard.
The presentation will be done by our senior planner, Marco Espinosa.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and council members. This item before you tonight was previously reviewed, discussed, and continued at the applicant's request on November 12th, 2019. Since then, the applicant has revised the applicant and is ready for review tonight. The project is located at 299 East Foothill Boulevard, just east of Longhorn Drive and north of North Walnut Avenue. The subject site was once the San Dimas Equestrian Center, which was a private facility. The applicant is seeking approval of the following development applications tonight: a general plan amendment, land use designation, a zone change, a vesting tentative tract map consisting of 15 single-family lots and 5 common lots, approval of development plan review, and a precise plan for the site layout and design of the homes, the tree removal permit for request for removal of 59 trees, and also the adoption of the initial study with mitigated negative declaration. All the development applications are fundamentally the same as previously reviewed at the November 12th, 2019 City Council meeting. On the screen, you'll see the previous reviewed vesting tentative map, which consisted of 20 single-family residential lots, a 2,500 cubic yard private debris basin, a city multi-use trail, and a tail portion lot that the applicant sought to negotiate with the city for approximately 30,000 square feet of parkland shown above the red dash line. The revised map layout has 15 single-family lots, a debris basin that can hold up to 6,000 cubic yards of burn in bulk that will be built to the Los Angeles County Public Works Department standards. The applicant also revised the map, placing the entire project on their property, no longer needing for negotiations of parkland. The tail portion will remain as a remnant lot with no development. Due to the enlargement and design of the debris basin, the multi-use trail, which was once proposed, has been removed from the project. As mentioned, the applicant is requesting an amendment to the general plan land use designation of the site from open space to single-family very low, allowing 0.2 to 3 units to the acre, which would be consistent with the proposed development of 15 units. A zone change is also being requested to change the zone from light agriculture currently to single-family 7,500. The proposed housing development will meet the minimum development standards of the single-family 7,500 zone in regards to setbacks, lot coverage, building heights, lot width, lot size, and parking requirements. Shown on the screen are the proposed front elevations of the different house styles. 13 of the 15 homes will be designed as 2 stories. 2 will be designed as 1 story, as recommended by the Planning Commission. Final approval of the house plans per the development plan review and precise applications will be performed by the Development Plan Review Board at one of their future meetings. At this time, they will also review the 1-story house plans. As mentioned, the project was previously heard at the November 12th, 2019 City Council meeting. The following items that I'll discuss are the main topics of discussion for that evening. 1, the size of the debris basin. 2, the proposed location of the debris basin. And 3, the use of parkland for the project. As the debris basin, staff discussed the need for a larger debris basin as the applicant was proposing a 2,500 cubic yard basin. As mentioned, it has been upsized to 6,000 cubic yards to meet the requirements of the Los Angeles County Public Works Department. So the purple line there represents the sewer line and an easement that would cross into an adjacent property. It's the 6,000 cubic yards is based on an analyzed slippage of the hillside in Horse Thief Canyon Park. The applicant has complied with this requirement. Also in discussion was the debris basin's location. The debris basin was proposed towards the northwest corner of the project site, similar to this one here. During the applicant's presentation at the November meeting, they mentioned that the basin should be considered at the Toa slope in Horse Thief Canyon Park. After the meeting, staff had further discussions with the applicant regarding the basin on the park and presented them a list of requirements and obligations they would need to meet to satisfy that need. The applicant respectfully declined and decided to revise the map to what you have before you tonight. Also, the council also discussed the need for a public meeting to discuss the possible abandonment and sale of parkland prior to the council considering the outcome and the proposed housing project. The council had several meetings on the item, but did not move forward after the applicant revised the map, not including any parkland on their project, as part of their project. As part of the revisions to the map, the multi-use trail has been removed, as mentioned, due to the enlargement, design, and layout of the debris basin. The trail was initially along the west property line of the project site. It cannot be in this location any longer because it does not fit due to the size of the debris basin. In addition, users of the trail would need to have crossed through the path of possible runoff during the rainy season. Initially, staff requested the multi-use trail to access Horse Thief Canyon Park as an additional means of access. However, the city would need to also have developed new trails connecting the proposed trail that is the proposed trail within the park, as there's currently no official trails once you enter the park in that area. Staff has determined that the loss of the trail is not detrimental to the project, as there's currently 3 other trails to the park as shown up on the screen and highlighted in yellow. And also in the general plan map, which is part of your staff report, as showing, not showing that proposed trail as a designated trail within the general plan. These trails can be safely, the ones in yellow, can be safely accessed from signaled intersections at San Dimas Avenue and also San Dimas Canyon Road versus the North Walnut potential access, which is not signalized. With that, staff recommends and the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council adopt the initial study mitigated negative declaration and also approve vesting tentative track map 1502, General Plan Amendment 1502, Development Plan Review Board Case 15-33, Precise Plan 1501, and Tree Removal Permit 1538, and introduce to approve the ordinance for the zone change 1502. That concludes my presentation. The applicant and his representatives are also here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Have any questions of staff?
I have a question, staff. The county is going to clean the basin now, right?
Yes, the intent would be.
Do they charge the homeowners for that every year?
No, they charge the public as a whole with the taxes we pay. So there's not going to be a special assessment or district or anything. No, it's just.
And is that basin, is that basin empty of most of the year? Only when it rains it fills up with water, or?
It would be, in general, you're probably just going to have weeds in there, if anything, or low grass growing. You're not going to have actual debris. The debris is meant to be for worst case situations where you did have a fire, which we did have this year, but and then there's some debris coming into that basin. In that case, they would have cleaned that out. But it is reviewed on an annual basis, is my understanding, and would be cleaned out.
I guess what I'm saying is there's not going to be a puddle of water in there all the time.
No, it is a soft bottom, so it is dirt. So the water would percolate through there. Any excess water, if it did fill up, has a way to channel out into the existing San Dimas wash. So it would be connected.
Okay.
So sitting or ponding water would not happen.
Thank you.
Just a couple questions, Marco. The notification for the Planning Commission hearing was 1,500 feet radius. What was it for this public hearing?
The same.
All right, thanks. So let's see, I just really have a couple other questions. On that chart that's on page 7 where it shows it's a lot development schedule, so it's page 7 of the staff report or page 127 of the agenda. And I emailed you, I don't know if you got an email from me earlier today about just explaining the total livable house square footage. Does that include the garage or not?
Yes, it should read building area.
Okay, so that includes the garage. All right, that's that. And I know I've asked that question before, so thanks for reminding about that. That debris basin, so what does it look like on the west side of the debris basin? Like, what is it? I went by there today and I saw, a wall that the property owners on to the west have, and how high is the debris basin berm? And
so
what does it look
will
like landscaping-wise and all that kind of stuff?
So the berm on the west side will be approximately 8 feet high from the lowest point on that side of the property.
8 feet from like the current
Yes.
ground. Okay.
And you will only probably maybe be able to see a foot or two based on, because there's an existing wall there. The wall, some of those walls, because there's an elevated change, some of it is higher than 6 feet, some of it's 7 feet. So it just depends on where exactly you're measuring from. So there's potential that the top of the wall of the berm, the top of the berm will not be seen because there's an existing block wall there now. Now, there is proposal on the plans for it says chain link. We have conditioned it to read as approved by the county, but we're proposing that they use a wrought iron fencing material. We'd also, at that time, when it goes through plan check and we work with the county, is that the fence actually dead end into the existing wall and not come across that area. There's no need for it to go on that, go parallel with the existing wall when we can safely protect the basin if we go just parallel to, intersect with the existing wall.
Right. I got it. And but there is some space at ground level before the berm starts from that wall you're talking about to as a basin.
Yes, and it's very narrow. The narrowest part is only 8 feet from the PL to the top of that berm, and then it kind of opens up a little bit. So it's going to be like a little valley, is what,
Right.
So it's very narrow.
And so a little valley, is that going to be planted with trees or bushes or grass or what?
It would be hydroseeded.
What does that mean?
So it would be more like a seed content where it's not, it's a natural native planting material. So like flowers and grasses is what typically would be planted on something like that.
Is it irrigated?
Yes. You cannot plant trees in these areas. It's against what the county would like, because they don't want it deteriorating the slope of the basin. So similar to the Brasada project, there's no trees on those debris basins either.
And so for this kind of kind of debris basin, this size and how tall it is and everything, what's the track record on the safety of the basin walls themselves, as far as being intact, and if there's a 100-year flood? I know if it tops out or goes up to a certain level, there'll be some overflow that goes out to the wash there. But is there a chance of the walls of the debris basin failing?
It's my understanding, with talking with Dave Gilbertson, our deputy engineer, and also with Sherry, that the county tends to overbuild some of these sites, so they don't, I would ask them if they want to further elaborate on that.
When they come
my
up,
understanding, they're safe.
It's probably good to elaborate when they come up.
Yeah.
Okay, one other question, and it's about the oak tree. It's apparently going to be removed because it's interfering with a wall and part of a foundation on Lot 7. Is there a way of, because I didn't see a map that overlaid Lot 7 and where the house is going to be with the location of the tree to be able to determine how big of an issue that is? And just, I'll ask all the questions right now. Is it possible to have a smaller house footprint on that lot to avoid that problem, or one of the single stories, or is there a way of being creative to preserve that one oak tree? And saying that, I realize that we've got a 10-to-1 replacement to take it out, so that's definitely good. But I just was wondering if any thought had been given to not just taking out every single tree because we just want a big flat area to deal with, not have to deal with any tree at all.
Yeah. That's tree number 34?
Yeah.
Okay. So the lots, because they've shifted in numbers, because they've reduced the amount, that wall actually has been shifted. So there is a possibility to potentially save that oak tree. So we could talk to the applicant about if that's a possibility of saving oak 34 at this time.
So in our tree removal, there's one resolution that includes the precise plan of the.
We would modify it.
So you can modify that to take a
preserve.
hard look at the preservation of that tree.
Correct.
All right, great. And it'd still be great to have 10 other oak trees or 9 others on the property if at all possible, especially along the entrance.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Any further questions? I just want to when I'm looking at the photograph on page 126, and the west side of the debris basin goes up against lot number 10, I guess, of the neighboring community. What's the distance between the debris basin and the wall?
At its narrowest point, it is 8 feet, and then it opens up to about, I would say, 13 to 15 feet. It just depends, again, where you measure.
Okay,
And you could see,
the same question for up
This-
against lot 11.
the debris basin ends here. So the only thing that is touching lot 11 is the spillway. So this is the actual debris basin, and this is just a spillway.
Just the spillway.
Yeah, so it's kind of a channel that comes in, directs all the debris into the debris basin.
Okay. What is there now?
Nothing, just dirt.
Nothing. So where this spillway is going to be up against the resident at lot 11.
Yeah, let me see.
Is there any distance between the spillway and the fence of lot 11?
And that would be approximately 3 to 4 feet, the spillway to the PL line. And that would be right in this area here.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And that's at its narrowest point there, too.
Narrows, okay.
Mayor, I did want to just note that Planning staff tonight has a copy of the initial study and mitigated negative declaration, the CEQA documents for this project at the hearing tonight, and those are entered into the record for the public hearing.
Thank you. All right. Would the applicant like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, can you formally open the public hearing?
Does that mean pound on that? Okay.
Marco, do you have that little clicker for me to run through my exhibits? Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Steve Hunter with Land Design Consultants. We are the consulting engineers and land planners representing the applicant. I'd like to thank staff for the last year and a half helping us bring this project back to the City Council and trying to address a lot of the areas. In this specific area right here, I think hopefully I can use a little pointer just to clarify a few items. In this debris basin, I don't know, I guess I can't, it's not working. Oh, there we go. In this particular area, in the previous plan, we had a 2,500 to 3,000 yard debris basin with a debris channel running along the westerly property line. As we're all aware of through the staff report, when the Planning Commission approved the project, they made two recommendations. One is to either build a debris basin on site to county standards for county maintenance or build a debris basin on the park. So as we went through the process and before we came before this council, the same issue of an off-site debris basin and on-site debris basin was discussed. Over the last year and a half, we've worked with staff trying to figure out where are we going to put this debris basin. It became very clear to us to try to put the debris basin on the park was going to be a very difficult task. What the council was asking for apparently in those items was, for us, it looked like it was a never-ending process for us to try to put a debris basin on the park, go through abandonment process, go through the laundry list of things that the city wanted at the time. It made sense to follow the recommendations of the Planning Commission and build a county-maintained debris basin on site. In the debris basin, there's been a couple questions. There's a 4 to 5 foot strip of land adjacent to our westerly boundary that is owned by the adjacent property owners. So the narrowest point is 8 feet to the debris basin to our property line, an additional 4 to 5 feet to the existing wall. So in the most northwesterly part of the site, we have about 13 feet to the wall. On the southerly site, we have about 15 to 18 feet between the edge of the berm of the debris basin and the existing wall. In the north area, staff asked us to put the spillway in to direct any debris flow or storm water from the park to get into the debris basin. There's 4 feet between the property line and the existing wall. There's also a 3 foot wide concrete drain that runs down the westerly property boundary. In talking about why we need a debris basin, why it has to be 6,000 cubic yards, in sub areas 1A and 4A in this area, we generate about, from the park, we generate about, or the park generates about 5,694 cubic yards just in those two areas. This is Maverick Avenue right here. Under existing conditions today, this sub area generates about 1,690 cubic yards. Today, during low flow storms, most of that water runs down Maverick. In this area, it generates a little over 3,900 yards of debris, and from the edge of that all the way down to this debris basin is about a quarter of a mile. Today, and historically, the storm flows from this property in the park area here flow south-southwesterly through the existing two tracks. And today, that channel is built to the edge of the park, and still some of that storm water runs in that direction. This is the plan that staff discussed, that was in the City Council discussed, and we had a hearing on back in November of 2019. As staff had mentioned, we removed all the area from here off the park land since it was evident the city did not want to do the property transfer in this area. We've always had a debris basin here. We did eliminate 5 lots to put in the county-maintained debris basin in this particular area. And very quickly, running through historical photographs of how this area drained, this is a 1928 historical area that shows that there's two primary flows. This is the primary flow that ran through the property. It also covered a larger watershed in this area. This was the primary drainage that flows about 125 feet north of our site. This is the secondary drainage that's currently on the park site today. Very quickly, 1936, only changes here, the additional area, additional trees were planted in this area, and additional trees were planted in this area on the site. 1949, not much change. 1960, everything still stayed the same. 1964, we started seeing changes. Going back to 1960, the county hadn't started construction. Oops, sorry about that. In 1960, you'll see that the county has not started construction of any of the storm improvements. 1964, between 1960 and 64, you see the county started construction of the spillway, box structure and channel. In this case, you still see there's no primary change to the drainage pattern. 1968, Metropolitan Water District, for whatever reason, built, which is today part of the soccer field, and this manufactured slope that has been of discussion over a period of time. There was a lawsuit that was filed in 1964 between the property owners and Metropolitan Water District for the diversion that was made right here. It affected, damaged the property here. That lawsuit was settled in 1968. 1972, all the water in here was diverted to the county's channel. The drain pattern maintained the same here. 1978, I refer to as the Maverick Track. It's under construction. The water and its historical flows still maintains its same path of travel. It's still north of the project site. City bought the property in about 1979. This is a historical photograph in 1980. Basically showed the city removed all the vegetation. I don't know if they did any minor grading or not, but the flow pattern still remains the same, running in that direction. 1994, when the city started doing some improvements in the park over here, direction of the flow still remained the same. In this case, any debris flow and stormwater runs between the two tracks in a concrete structure that is required to be maintained by the property owners. Or maybe it's the HOA, I'm not 100% clear on that. This is just to quickly, this is the county's GIS net site. It indicates that historically, that's where the flows go. This is just an aerial showing the existing homes in part of the park today, and where the applicant is either required to build the discussion of a debris basin here or a debris basin here. This is the concrete drain that was referred to briefly in my discussion here. That's exactly where today, there's the concrete drain. This is the property line stake that was put here. It's about 4 feet to the wall. This is owned by each of the individual property owners. This is the drainage that is of question that we see in all the aerials. Where does it drain? It drains right to the existing drain that was built between the two subdivisions. The wall and the drain was built later. I'm not sure when exactly a permit was issued. I couldn't find the permit within the city. The original project approval was putting a wood fence on the property line. This drain was inside the subdivision. It was later put outside the subdivision. This is just a photograph of the park of one of the areas that drains from the debris area within the park. This is the area that drains to Maverick. And what you see between the two photographs is a very minor area that comes off the hillside. You don't see any distinct drainage pattern in here or erosion in here. It's sheet flows. Then the low flow drains onto Maverick today. I don't know how to get to the aerial from here, Marco. This is a drone flight. This shows the council this is the primary drainage area that generates the potential debris flow. And again, I say potential. It's based on the entire drainage burning out in a capital storm or a 50-year storm coming through and creating, you might have seismic events, whatever will generate the silt to the bedrock in this area that might end up draining down into the debris basin. This is the secondary drainage I made reference to that currently today drains down partly into Maverick. This generates about 1,690 cubic yards. Again, it's assumed that it completely burns out, followed by a capital storm. This is the area where there was discussions about putting a debris basin. It's a passive part of the park. In this whole area coming down through this part of the park, there is no incised drainage. It's all sheet flow. It's all assumed anything coming off here will sheet flow across the park, end up in the drainage, which currently today drains in between the two subdivisions. I think when we flew this, I don't think the park is quite this green today, but it was when we flew it. But clearly you can see the drainage flowing right down between where the homes are. That is the historical path. It still drains there. One of the questions is the spillway. Staff requested that we put the spillway in here to try to intercept the flow that today will run and hit the wall, go down this 3-foot wide, 1-foot deep concrete drain. So in putting the debris basin here, the applicant is willing to accept that diversion into a debris basin. Most of the equestrian center has been demoed at this point. Again, here's where the concrete drain roughly is. That's where it intercepts on the park. That's the county spillway. And here where you see is the slope in this pad that was built between 1960 and 1964. This is what's referred to as the panhandle piece that was going to be raised up to the park grade, and as part of the first project that came before the council as a property exchange. The current applicant, San Dimas Foothill Partners, has been working with the city and the staff on this project for 4.5 years. I was involved in the project for 1.5 years prior to that with another developer. So between 4.5, 5, 6 years, we've been trying to solve this drainage problem and this debris basin problem. In this particular case, at this point, it was clear to us that it was going to be very difficult to try to do anything but build a debris basin on site, and that's what we did. Again, following the Planning Commission's recommendations, I know there's a lot of concerns and issues that some of the community has, but as far as designing this debris basin, we talk about the safety of the debris basin. Around the basin, it's a 6-inch concrete facing slab. That facing slab will go below grade 6 to 8 feet. Based on the county's determination, we believe there'll be very low velocity coming into the basin. We'll put whatever fencing around the basin that the county will approve. If it's the wrought iron fencing, we're happy to do that. I know there was a comment made that the county fencing would somehow connect to the existing wall. We don't have the ability to do that. We don't own that 5-foot strip. So we'll have to work with staff and the county on how the debris basin is fenced and accessed. And we'll do whatever we can. Make it very clear, this basin is not designed to hold water. The debris tower there joins the existing grade. The debris basin flows 4% to the tower. The tower, under a capital storm, is designed in size, and the holes in that tower and the height of the tower is to make sure that no water is in that basin during the peak of the storm or any time more than 72 hours. Most likely it'll be drained within 12 hours. There was also a comment, what happens in a capital storm if the basin fills up with water? There is a design of an elevated inlet as an overflow that will drain into the channel. We will do whatever we can to make the area around the basin Marco was correct. The county does not allow us to actually plant trees within the downslope in the debris basin from the top of the dike, but we'll landscape everything around it, whatever room there is, to plant as many trees as we can along the westerly boundary. We will certainly make every effort to do that. There was a question, I think it's our lot 3, oak tree number 34. When we designed that, we looked at it. It has a large canopy. I think there is an opportunity to save oak tree number 34. Would be in the northeasterly corner of lot 3. The grades pretty much match the existing grades, but we would have to have an encroachment to be able to trim back the canopy. It's a very large canopy. Flows over into our lot 4. So if it's the council's desire for us to set the house in there and adjust the canopy, we would ask for an encroachment permit instead of a removal of the oak tree to accommodate trying to leave tree 34 in place. I think we have an opportunity to do that. The other oak trees that were mentioned, if we can go back to the site plan. I'm not sure how to clear this. In this particular case, I think the other oak trees that were discussed run along here. The problem with trying to save any of those trees, they actually cross the property line. And those existing county fencing along here is already damaged from those trees that are on both property. We did meet with the county. We discussed with them about putting a concrete drain on their property to intercept their water that runs from their manufactured slope, part of the spillway here. The county recognizes that they probably should have built that themselves because they're not allowed to drain their water onto private land. So we'll build a concrete drain along here and any fencing and walls, but unfortunately, because those trees, all the trees along here are straddling both properties, it would be impossible to pick up their water, build a drain, and do what we need to do to save those trees. But we certainly did look at doing that. We did have the discussion with the county. And hopefully that answers all the questions. If council has any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions?
I don't really have a question, but your comments about that particular oak tree, I think it could actually add value to those properties. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage you to take a look at that.
We actually did. When we looked at the totality of everything, the fact that we were originally asking to remove all the trees, it certainly is more simple for us not to have it in our way, but we did actually set the pad elevation if there was a requirement to save the tree. Given its new location, since we pulled off the park, we have no improvements or grading or retaining walls as we did in the last plan the council saw. I think we actually show the tree on lot 3. It's right there. So we did set the grade on the pad. To be able to do that, obviously we need an encroachment permit to build the property line wall, encroachment for the rear property line between the residential lots and the city park, and then we need encroachment permit to trim the canopy to reshape the tree, because right now the canopy is many years of no maintenance. And so I think we have an opportunity we can save the tree.
Okay. Any further questions of the applicant? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the project?
Mayor, there were public comments submitted to the city clerk's office through email.
Okay.
Those emails that came in were subject matters for housing element SB 23 in the Villa Verde Shopping Center. They were received from Eduardo Rivas, John Began, Betty Jean Lamb, Velma Acevedo, Loretta Spar.
Point of order, this is the public hearing with regards to 299 Foothill. If this is in regards to general public comment, this is not the appropriate time to report it.
Well, most of these emails are touching upon all those topics, all 3 of those topics, and including, they're labeled housing element. and some of them talk about SB 23, some talk about this subject matter and Via Verde, but it's all in the same emails.
Yeah, I saw at least one email, if not a couple, and Deborah may have read them more carefully, that the writer talked about a variety of city issues, and 299 Foothill is one of them.
Okay.
I think that's what...
If they touch on this Foothill property, then let's go ahead and put them into the record for this public hearing. So continue. Thanks, Deborah.
David Ramirez, Mr. and Mrs. Sam Viana, Betty Jean Lamb, and those are the end of the public comment emails received.
Thank you. Sir?
I'm Steve Syverson.
Okay, are you in favor or opposed?
Well,
if you're
that's what I wanted
opposed,
to-
if you're opposed, you give me 1 second and I'll make that conversation. If you're in favor of it, then...
That's what I wanted to ask, was whether there was going to be any other
Yes,
opportunity.
there's going to be.
Okay,
right?
great.
Don't go too far. Don't go too, you're going too far. Okay. All right, seeing none, people who want to speak in favor of the project, any of those opposed to the project?
And I'm not putting myself as being opposed to the project, because broadly the project I'm in favor of. My name is Steve Syverson. I'm a recent resident, moved here in March. I live in the Lot 11 that was highlighted there, and most of those pictures of the back fence and the swale running along, those are my corners of the world up there.
Okay.
And we're lucky to have had that fire right behind our place. So, and in terms of the park, we've walked actually in the park about 50 times since March. So we go out our back door, we go across what will become that wash, the concrete wash will bump right up against the back of our property apparently. And I've looked at some of these details and tried to kind of understand this situation. My question is, and I understand there's long history and different kinds of conversations, but it seems to me that it would make better sense from a public policy standpoint and serving the people of San Dimas to build the two smaller debris basins up at the top of the park, because it would then prevent the large mass of debris, should it ever happen to come, from going across the parklands, coming down the parklands and getting down to the bottom of things here. And it just seems to me that there was originally a planning commission suggestion that that was the best location. There's debate about what it takes to make that happen and giving away public parklands and things. We've walked that particular space. It seems to me that those degree basins could be there, and the trails could go on both sides of them, and it would not be disruptive to that upper part of the park, which primarily is not being used for anything right now, other than just being space. And so I just wonder about revisiting that question. And I understand that the developer has offered to put it on site because there were so many obstacles to potentially, that it was going to take another 2 or 3 years before it could even move through the process of getting to place them up there. But I would just say, from a logical standpoint, it seems like it protects more people, it protects public land more effectively by building it up there than by building it down here, aside from what it does to the back end of my lot 11 there. So thank you for hearing me. I sent you all a letter.
Yes, sir, you did.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to speak either in favor or against this project? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council.
So, Mr. Mayor, you're formally closing the public hearing?
Public hearing is closed.
Well,
Dennis?
I think we put a lot of obstacles in the way of this development, and at first I was opposed to it, but the way the developer has built it, I think he's expressed the wishes of the staff and I could support this. I think it's probably going to be a very expensive development. It's too bad there's not going to be any affordable housing in it, but that's another story we can talk about later. But I think staff and the developer have done a good job in putting something together that is acceptable to the community. I am concerned about all the tree removals, but there's going to be the replacement, which I think was a good thing. So,
I will say I am not going to support the project. I'm very disappointed in the developer. I'm very disappointed in staff and the negotiation process as it relates to this. I can't envision the debris flow basin on site, especially as grotesque as it is now, as I try and envision people living there with this, raising a family. It's likened to the street that is just south of Foothill on the west side of the street, just north of the debris flow or of the wash. And you look at those homes and you just kind of wonder, how did they end up there? And how did all this come to be? And unfortunately, knowing the history of this and even hearing the comments from the representative for the developer, it sounds like there just wasn't will to work through the problems. And so, unfortunately, I will not be supportive of the project and any of the amendments.
John?
And that includes the trees. I just want to be clear for you guys there.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, I'll support it. You know, it was sad in the old days to see Ann Meredith's property go from being an equestrian center, which I think was a real key in the community. So it's sad that it's not there anymore, but that was a long time ago, and we are where we are. You know, we are changing a zone that allows agriculture and open space or whatever, and a person who owns that property is entitled to one house on that piece of property, just as anybody else who has a piece of property can build the one house. Anything beyond that is the city trying to work to improve the community in some way. I didn't like the idea of the debris basin being on the park. Anybody who's followed, or we've had multiple discussions about that, knows that. I'm from what I'm looking at, and I guess maybe the final question is, it looks like that the debris basin with that channel, the cement channel that starts in the middle of Lot 11 to this on Longhorn, is that going to help protect the properties over there, as opposed to having the water go through that drain that seems kind of small? Or is it going to be the same as before? And I'm thinking of the catastrophic fire and then flood kind of situation.
It will help because it's going to divert it into the basin. That's the purpose of the spillway, is to help divert it away from the properties.
Okay. Now, with that in mind, would it help if and I'm just going a little farther here, that the developer probably wouldn't be involved in this, but would it help more if that spillway extended up another 100 feet or something?
I would leave that up to the engineers to make that determination. I couldn't make that determination myself.
What do the engineers think? Got Dave here. Dave's got to at least say something here in the meeting.
I appreciate that. Dave Yolverson, Deputy City Engineer. We contemplated extending that spillway further. And it's something that we will certainly pursue if this project were approved and we proceeded further with plan check. We would need to consult with the county on that. But what we have shown now for sure would help direct the flow into this basin. If you saw the pictures that the applicant's engineer showed, that narrow drainage channel across, on the north side of Longhorn, that will not contain 6,000 cubic yards of material. So that's the whole purpose of this basin here, is to collect that debris, because once that starts to enter that little narrow strip, trying to get it out would be very difficult. So yeah, we want to do everything we can to get the mud and debris into this basin and not down that existing channel. But we'd have to consult with the county and work. That's a lengthy process, as you all know, with the LA County Flood Control.
I'm just curious to staff. There has been a lot of time spent on this project, and I think the staff did a rather elaborate job making the case as it related to the debris flow, the hydrology, the erosion, the impact on the park. So when we talk about community benefit, I'm wondering if we're selling out to make a project go, or if we're actually looking at the broader context of the community benefit as it was laid out by staff when this came forward at one point when we were discussing the debris flow basin up in the park. So there's emails that I know were sent to the council and to the city that are not in the packet that did talk about some of this. So I'm wondering, what is the city going to do to mitigate those issues, or are we going to just ignore the issues that the staff brought forward as it relates to the debris flow and the erosion in the park and how that traverses all of that land?
Regulations have changed since the Longhorn development and the Maverick development. If you notice, there's no debris basins constructed for those developments. Brasada, you notice they've got 4 or 5 debris basins on that project. So the county and all these agencies have learned over the years that after a fire season and when you've got a natural topography, you have to protect the downstream properties. And that's the sole purpose of this basin, is to protect these 15 homes, in addition with the spillway to protect the existing homes on Longhorn, on Maverick. So that's the sole purpose of this basin. And whether it's on the park or whether it's right here on the development, it's going to serve its purpose, that it will protect those homes.
Would we not get more benefit out of putting it closer to the source of the debris flow? It sounds like Maverick and potentially Longhorn, I guess, are just a wash, no pun intended.
Well, you saw the historic flows. Not a whole lot of water gets to Maverick. It all gets to that channel north of Longhorn, and that's the whole purpose of this basin. So it does serve its purpose here. Yeah, it would have been, it's a better design if it's up at the north end of the park, but you still have potential debris flow a lot smaller from that point to the north end of this development. You might have to address that with a smaller basin there as well, but it still, in my opinion, serves its purpose with the location on the development.
So this isn't the best we can do.
Pretty close.
Thank you.
Okay.
John?
I don't have any other questions, Dave. Thank you.
I've thought about this a lot for the last, say, 4.5 years, okay? And it's come along, and I have to look at what was said 4.5 years ago. Then there went a period of time, you didn't know what this project was going to do, and then came back and talked about it again, and then the Planning Commission met with it, and they made a decision back sometime, and their recommendation was to go ahead with the project, but they had the big but. We think that you ought to look at the better design would be at the top of the hill. Back 4.5 years ago, I got to be honest with everybody here. Staff totally convinced me the best thing to do was put it at the top of the hill, period. Okay? The builder, the developer, 100% convinced me 4.5 years ago that the best place to put this was at the top of the hill. I can remember the conversations. Most of the conversations was, this is the best thing for the city of San Dimas. Okay? The city, that housing development, there was a concern, but there was no doubt from any of the engineers totally involved in it, both the city engineers and the developers engineers, that the basin belonged at the top of the hill. Then there was conversation about it being park property, and then there was conversation about this. So the builder went off and said, you know, it came out to a 3-2 vote at that time, and the builder started working on it, the developer rather, started working on the project, and eventually came up with this project. I'm considering it shoehorning this project into it. The neighborhood, that neighborhood is concerned, and I'm not so sure that the developer has convinced the neighborhood that that's the safest and best way to go. I just believe that, you know, just like Ryan, is this the best for the community? Is this the best for the developer? I realize it's going to cost more money or whatever that is, but that's not, you know, that's not what's before us today. I will not be supportive of this project. I'm looking forward to I'm hoping it doesn't die, but it sounds like it is, but I just don't think it's, you know, the right design. And it's based, quite honestly, on what the developers told me 4.5 years ago, sitting right in this room. So I will not be supporting it, so I'll be calling for a vote. And
there has to be a motion, of course.
Yeah, well.
And so I'll just say this about it. There are a lot of things about the development and this kind of development that are not perfect, in my opinion. And San Dimas, luckily, has a staff and an outlook, a philosophy that we provide a little bit of space, a little bit of backyard for each house. And that's the case in this development. Are they big on the lot? Yes. I like the chart that showed on the various house plans, you know, that the second story is a certain percentage of the first story, and just all those design elements help make it not just boxes 8 feet from each other along you know, just in rows. So I think they've done a good job as best could be done. I wish the houses were smaller, but that's just not the climate today for this kind of development. The debris basin, my concern about it is the second concern is the appearance of it. The first concern is the safety of it, and that includes safety of anybody, like a child, getting into the debris basin area. So that's certainly important. But does it protect the not only these properties, but does it protect the properties on Longhorn? I think the debris flow that we've been talking about and what you were convinced about, because our former director of public works insisted that a debris basin at the top of the park would be beneficial. One big reason, and he showed many slides about it, was the debris that every year occurs when there's a big rain. It comes over the street a little bit up in the park, and there's a cleanup that has to be done. But it's not a lot of damage. Does it cost a few dollars to clean it up? Yes, and every single year you have to do it. I totally agree. On the other hand, giving away an acre or whatever it is we need to give away of parkland, you have to weigh those two things. So is the current plan benefiting the neighborhoods that are concerned? And I guess I'll say, you know, kind of like Emmett, you said, Emmett, you were convinced it 4.5 years ago. I'm convinced now that this debris basin will, and the spillway and all the things about it will protect the neighbors on Longhorn. And I think that's really an important, and that whole development, but especially those ones that back up right to it and where that little channel goes through between the two developments. So that's, I applaud the developer and staff at working on this and working on it and reducing the lots from, you know, we originally had 28 or something like that, then it was 20, and now it's 15, which is a big hit. And yet I feel that the yards and everything are the best we've seen for that piece of property. You might remember the original one where we had virtually 0 lot lines and, you know, doors that were around the side of the house, the front door, and it was just shoehorned in, talk about shoehorned in. So So it may look like it's not going to pass today, but I'll just say that I've come around to support a development there. Could it be different? I'd be open-minded to something else as well. But I would be willing to support this particular development. I think it resolves the problems that we were looking at. And that sheet flow across the park, and we've seen the debris. I know talking about rocks and mud and stuff that gets on the road in a big rain. I just don't think it's not a safety concern. It's mainly a cleanup concern, and I just don't think the trade-off of having a bunch of land taken out of the park to save that cleanup cost is the right kind of trade-off. I believe that leaving the park intact and dealing with that debris flow, which isn't dangerous and it's not really threatening property, I think this plan is a little bit better in the debris and handling the debris. That's my thoughts on that.
Thank you, John. Just to clarify a little bit, I can support a project. I can, but I can't support this project based on the fact that, one, the community around there is very concerned about their safety and their property safety. And they've made it very clear. And our planning commission, they had to address this project. They couldn't go back to the project 4.5 years ago. Even though back 4.5 years ago, they believed that the best location might have been, and they said it in a separate memo, that they felt that the better location was on the top of the hill. The staff felt that, and then I realized that we have a different director and all of those things, but we do have still the same engineers who believed at that period in time that it was better served at the top of the hill for both not only the project but for the community good. So I'm still adamantly supportive of a project, but I just want to see, something that makes sense to me, okay, and makes sense to the community, okay, and that's it. And I'd like to ask one question before I turn it back over to you. Okay, I'd like to ask one question of the staff and the city manager and the engineer. Okay, what is different about this project than what we're looking at with the housing element, where certain communities who were concerned about, about moving next to them and stuff like that, worrying about additional housing elements or whatever. This seems to be different to me because unlike John, I do believe it is a safety concern. And I'd like to know what's the difference. Chris?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, your land use authority, your general plan really is the Bible and the highest level of how you promulgate policy for how the city will look. And so when that plan was developed, you've determined certain properties to have a certain use and a general use, like in this case at 299, light agriculture. That doesn't mean it can't change. It just means that we've planned the city in the following fashion. And so the areas with regards to the affordable housing, state law dictates that we need to define a certain number of units to meet our RENA numbers, and it's the city's obligation to identify parcels and zone parcels in such a manner that would facilitate that number of affordable housing units, not necessarily guaranteeing that the city will develop or ensure that those are developed, but it will facilitate it. The difficulty that I think, the difference that you're seeing here is this is not an easy project in an easy location. This is not the first developer that's tried to develop the project or been involved in this and have it failed, because it happens to be in a location that has a very sensitive use next to it. And so light agriculture next to the park in this area is what somebody back in the day, that was our founding fathers or prior to us, the county, thought that light agriculture is what it should be. The developer's done a good job doing the best that they can to put a project together to on the one hand, to provide housing, but on the other hand, to also make a return on their investment in the property. And so the question that you're really faced with, which is similar to affordable housing, is from a policy perspective, do we desire single-family homes to be in this area? And if you do the general plan amendment. Then the question becomes, with what it would require to do so, are we okay with that debris basin on site and its potential intended implications to the neighbors, to the community, to the development itself? And then lastly, in looking at this site, because a debris basin will be required for the site, does the city want, as a policy, to leverage the need for that to occur and the secondary benefits of doing it up top and benefiting the entire community through the park in requiring that? When I arrived, we've gone through a number of iterations, and the developer had been engaged in negotiations in a variety of fashion to try to get to a viable project. And what we have to understand, a previous council has spoken, that's light agriculture. So anybody who takes on the project is taking on a high-risk project that has to convince our council, our community, that this is workable, desirable, meets the needs, may not be perfect, but at least fits something that a majority of the council would support. And that's the question that I think you have to grapple with the same way you did with affordable housing.
Super, thank you. Any additional?
I was just going to say that, I have to agree with the mayor that I disagree to a degree with John in the context that I also see it as a safety issue. I think the investment in the basin, its maximum benefit to the community is in the park, as it was previously discussed. And you save not only the Maverick residents, but you also save the people who are further down the hill. And you also, there's been discussions about the community benefit in the park and other activities in the park and all these other things. So anyways, needless to say, I'm not going to, I can support a project there, I think, at some point in the future, but I'm not going to support this project as proposed currently.
I'm not surprised by the vote. I could have predicted it before we even had the presentation. But I hope that if we're thinking about the community, if developers is going to probably come back and put the basin up in the top of the park, I just hope that we make him or her pay for the property that they're going to use to put the basin. And that's important for the community to get the money and not to give the developer the property free to build his or her basin. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. John?
And so it's opened up a whole can of worms of possibilities here. So we could leave the zoning. First of all, I'm not for changing the zoning before we have a plan in front of us. So I'm not at all interested in changing the general plan and zoning to single family 7,500 until we see something that's actually going to work. And yeah, but I haven't.
Still making comments.
Yeah, still making comments. Still making comments about what is going to happen. What do we want to have happen? So we could leave it as is. Somebody could put a ranch in there. I mean, I'd love it, but it could be attached to the park. There's lots of ways of doing it as is.
Is that a motion?
Not a motion. The motion is, well, it's going to be what it is. We're not going to do anything. If we're going to talk about those debris basins, this is the last thing I'll say about it. I would like to know the difference financially, safety-wise, protection of having the debris basin up above. What is that community benefit? Is it the rocks that fall across the street? It's not Maverick, because Maverick doesn't get really much flow, but whatever that is, I'd like to know that difference between up there and on the property. And the last question is last comment is a two-parter. Do we want to continue this to a date uncertain so the property owner can work on it some more or come back with something different? If we don't want to do that, and I'm fine not doing it. In fact, I'll be voting with, I think we should just have a unanimous vote. And, if it's not going to fly, we might as well just say, let's let it die and go forward.
Well, our option, John, is real simple. To take a vote, be whatever we think it's going to be. Evidently, I guess we think it's going to be 2-2.
Yeah. Right.
Then a continuous would probably be, I believe, would be in order, and for 2 weeks until Eric gets back, have him a chance to review the public hearing by way of either tape or redo it or something. But the reality is that it's right now.
That's not a bad idea. I think the mechanics of doing that would be, if I'm not mistaken, correct me, would be to reopen the public hearing, continue it to the next meeting or some other meeting, and then have the public hearing continued and close it then, and then take the vote. I don't think it would be to turn it down now and then bring it back.
I think we'd leave this to Jeff.
You could decide to continue it now, and Councilmember Weber would then have to review the tape of the public hearing because he wasn't here tonight to see the testimony. And then you could either just have him come back and then make a decision, or you could have him come back the next meeting and reopen the public hearing if you wanted to hear more testimony. You can do either of those.
Okay.
Or you could vote tonight and see what happens, and if there's a tie, the applicant deserves a decision on his application, so it would have to be continued anyway if there were a tie, if you voted tonight.
Well, a tie is a failure. It's a no.
Let me ask one question of the council, okay? Is there anyone up here is there more information we can come up with tonight by what the developers here, whatever folks are here? Is there anything that could be said tonight that may sway you one way or the other?
No, I believe from everything that I've been made aware of, that the developer and the staff have worked diligently to try to get through to present this. So I don't believe there's any other information at this point that would cause me to sway.
I agree
too.
I agree.
The last thing I wanted to say was a caution to everybody.
We agree.
If we turn this down and it just stays as it is, harken back a long time ago to last night, and the easiest sites to develop for higher density, and the state is happiest with these sites, are vacant pieces of property. And so this would go onto the list of potential sites as one of the most easily passing the HCD review, and would end up being 100 units. Not sure what it would be. So, and I'm not saying I'm for or against that, but if we leave it as is, zoned the way it is, vacant property, it is one of the most prime candidates for the denser. I'm not saying affordable, I'm just saying denser to meet the 1,248 units that we are trying to meet. And it would certainly be a candidate. So that's why I'm sort of saying if we want a development like this, we're going to have to either, I guess, try to do the park thing if that's what we end up wanting to do. But I'm just saying we should probably continue it unless we're just going to close the door on a development there and say we're going with high density.
I have no heartburn at all, but continue it and let Councilman Weber review the tapes and then make a decision in 2 weeks. If you want to continue it for 2 weeks or you want to continue it longer, right? It'll be up to, I guess, the staff and the developer.
If we don't continue it to a date certain, we're going to have to renotice. That would be the only difference that I know.
I believe there's plenty of time for Councilman Weber to review the tape. Let's make it to a date certain of the next council meeting. Any problems?
We should have a motion to continue the item to, what's the date of the next? July 27th at 7 p.m.
I have a motion.
I'm not making that motion.
I'll make that motion and continue until July 27th at 7 o'clock.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3-1, and with one absentee and Councilman Weber. So we do not have to go through the rest of these zone change or vesting or anything like that
Nope,
till?
all that'll be brought back.
Right, okay.
When you come back, when we reopen the public hearing, could we get a sort of a definitive answer as to what happens if we just turn the project down? You know, as far as what is the status of the land at that point?
Then they stay just light agriculture? That's the way I understand it.
Okay.
Yeah, it just stays just the way it is.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Am I missing anything? We're going to go to other business. Other business, discussion and direction of city technology used for the public safety cameras. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the City Council meeting of June 22nd, there was a request by the council and support by a second council member to agendize a discussion of installing public safety cameras in this case specifically, Pioneer Park and Freedom Park, where our Heroes Monument is. And so the staff report before you provides you a summary of what I believe is sufficient information to at least start having the conversation and get direction in terms of what we should do. Currently, the city has cameras at the Pioneer Park. These cameras were manufactured by a company called Security Lines US, and they are managed by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, who monitors those cameras, not actively, but passively. So in the cases of all the vandalism that occurred in Pioneer Park, once we have an incident that's reported, the sheriff's office then goes to an administrative portal that they have access to and takes a look at the videos and downloads the videos to try to identify the individual who committed that crime. We've had a chance to look at those cameras, and in some cases you have good information that it provides. In other cases, we've had landscaping, trees that have grown to the point where they've blocked some of the view of those cameras. Staff has worked to cut those back. And in other cases, in Pioneer Park, where is the only park that we do have active cameras, the locations of those cameras and capabilities don't fully adequately cover the entire park. And so I may see somebody do graffiti on a building, I can see it, I personally have seen the video, but not in sufficient detail because of the distance and quality to ascertain, identifying, or provide us some more information that the Sheriff's Department could identify who this individual would be. And so adding additional cameras to Pioneer Park would allow us to complete that park and provide cameras in those locations around the bathroom facilities to be able to capture folks that are actually doing that type of damage, vandalism to that location. In regards to Freedom Park, the request was to install cameras due to a recent event of vandalism of the Heroes Monument. We've had 2 instances of vandalism in the last 2 months. The first instance of the vandalism, I believe, was 2019, August, in which case that suspect was captured. In the case of the second one, the damage was mostly cleaned up by individuals that were there that witnessed, that saw the damage to the monument, and then eventually cleaned up by city staff, but that suspect, I believe, still remains at large. There are no cameras at Freedom Park. In terms of cameras, there's several considerations, policy considerations we have to think about. The Sheriff's Department, there's the initial cost and installation of those cameras. So the Sheriff's Department received an estimate to install and complete the project at Pioneer Park and to install cameras at the Freedom Park Heroes Monument. The total cost of the cameras themselves and the installation is $12,000. And I've estimated an additional $8,000 with regards to utility trenching, poles, and contingencies in the hopes that, if we're going to estimate a number, that it's a little over what the actual number is to ensure it's sufficient. So that would be a total of approximately $20,000. So the City Council has before them What we're asking for is direction on how you want to proceed. If we do proceed with cameras, or if we don't proceed, the second recommendation is the council to discuss just an overall policy in how we deal with cameras or any other kind of technology that we utilize for public safety. Because the issues, when you look at cities across the state and the nation with regards to cameras, are far larger than, let's put a camera so we can identify a vandalism. The government code in California requires the storage of video for the period of a year. You can reduce that period down to a minimum of 90 days if you watch the cameras and create minutes of activity that are occurring in the camera, which you can imagine is very staff intensive and probably not ideal. So capturing a year's worth of video for every single camera in a high definition camera starts to add up quite significantly the cost of storing that video. So that's one piece. The other piece ends up being the implications of what would effectively be a surveillance system in public, civil liberties implications, accountability when we see inappropriate activity that may occur in the park. All of those are issues that other cities have grappled with through policy and public discussion. So one of the recommendations for you to consider would be, irrespective of the decision on cameras, to direct staff to come forth with a policy that governs not just cameras, but all types of technology that we may deploy for public safety purposes or for other operational purposes, have a public hearing and public discussion of that policy to ensure that we have a well thought out and vetted policy, and then implement that policy to guide us in any camera installation or technology installation that we may do across the city. But both of those actions could happen independently of each other. So you can approve camera installations and locations while simultaneously we're developing a policy if you so choose. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I have a question. We have cameras at Pioneer Park already.
Correct.
Have they done any good?
They have, and I'll ask if Ash can come forward and talk about what has occurred because of those cameras.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. Well, the park, if you recall, the reason we got the cameras at Pioneer Park was when we had a murder back then, where a couple of folks got shot by the tennis courts. I don't know if you remember that or not. And we had a couple of cell phone snatches and backpack snatches. Basically, their phones and backpacks were stolen. So back then, when this idea was brought up to enhance public safety by installing some cameras there, so as far as we haven't had any robberies or anything of any type of assaults or anything of that occurred at the park. However, we've seen an increase in graffiti, right? Graffiti is something that if you don't see it, you have to identify the person. So the acts of graffiti right now are being captured by the cameras at the park. But identifying the folks who are committing the graffiti is a little bit more challenging. Reason being is we have to capture their faces. So with what Mr. Constantine had just proposed, if we place a camera near where the snack bar shack is and where the bathrooms are, would help us identify who these folks are. So if we're talking about serious crimes as far as assaults or robberies at the park, it has helped out. But as far as solving some of our graffiti incidents, it has not, because we're capturing the actual crime happening. On some cases, they're covering their faces and coming out with obviously with COVID, most of them have masks on. So we've been fortunate enough to where we had some eyewitnesses that helped us arrest some suspects, and we have followed through on that. But I think if we enhance our camera capabilities and placing them in a way where it could help us maximize capturing somebody's face, it'll definitely help out. So depends how, when you say if it's been, if it's been, if we got the bang for our money as far as the investment for the city. I think if we are, let's say if a heinous crime occurs there, it will definitely help us out. What happened 3-4 years ago there, it will definitely help us out, because we would have information on the car driving away. We would have description of the vehicle. We would have description of what the suspect was wearing, because the cameras are there basically to capture that. And then obviously our investigators would apply their knowledge and solving the case. So I think depending on what type of crime you're talking about, it has helped out in reducing some of the serious crimes in the park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to see the staff create a project or a proposal, personally, that is a roadmap for installing cameras throughout all of our parks. I think that we don't need to be doing what we've been doing, and that's being reactionary. I think we should be more forward-thinking than that. And we put in the cameras at Pioneer Park in the wake of the murder. Now we're talking about Freedom Park in the wake of vandalism and somebody just really disrespecting a very sacred place. And I also think that tonight, if we appropriate any funding, that we should also do it for Lone Hill Park, since we had another murder. So I would have no issue with appropriating, you said 20,000 for Freedom Park, right? Is that how much you're thinking?
Freedom Park and
Pioneer Park. I believe
Park.
we know it's 12,000 for the equipment and in the installation of the equipment. What we don't have an exact price on would be what level of trenching and poles and whatnot. And so if the council desires that direction, I would caveat approve 20,000 for those two parks, with the proviso that when we get a final estimate, if it's a little over than that, we would come back to council, or I would transfer fund under my authority to cover that difference.
I would almost propose appropriating 60,000 and having you go to Lone Hill Park and include it in this effort.
Or we can do that.
That would be my thought.
John?
Well, I certainly am in favor of the finishing Pioneer Park and Freedom Park, doing Freedom Park as suggested in the staff report. I'm also looking forward to, I would like to have that policy developed that is mentioned in the staff report that Chris has talked about, to talk about cameras in general and, what to do about them, when to do them, where to do them, that kind of thing. I can get behind the Lone Hill one, too. I think the immediate one is the finished Pioneer Park and to do Freedom Park. For whatever reason, we can get into what parks are safer than others. Pioneer Park is in need of it probably the most, I would say, and Freedom Park, due to the recent incidents.
Are these cameras stationary, or can they be moved?
They can be moved, but they're not intended to be moved. They have pan, tilt, zoom, so you can zoom in very closely. You can move the camera in the direction that it's pointing. But what the Sheriff's Office has done has established how those cameras point to maximize the coverage of the cameras. But if there's a reason to change, we can change that. But the initial camera purchase is intended to be at a singular location and not, let's say in 2 weeks, we want to move it here, in 3 weeks over there. We could look to cameras that would be movable, or an installation where we could install a setup, and then for whether our staff or a contractor could come and then move the cameras to a different park or different location if you desire that.
I just remembered that I own that piece of property on Railway that's close to Pioneer Park, so I don't know how we want to even handle it. For Freedom Park, I'm good with that. So, Jeff, what's your recommendation?
And now that he mentions it, I think I'm right on the cusp with Freedom Park.
Oh, I think you are. Well, what we should do is we should have separate discussions about each park, if we can do that. And in one of the discussions, Councilmember Ebner will have to leave, and in another one of the discussions, Councilmember Vienna will have to leave.
Well,
Councilman Weber is not here.
Sorry, Ebner. Sorry.
let's make a motion for Freedom Park first. Okay?
Okay, does Ryan have to actually leave? This is only
Can I
going to
just recuse?
I would just make a
Technically, you're supposed to leave the room.
Just step out the door.
I would make a motion that we
That's why it's good to have a policy.
Yeah.
So it's just a policy blanket, and then we don't.
So what is it for Freedom Park? It's $12,000?
I don't have the estimates. Freedom and Pioneer Park is $12,000.
So we're going to separate them.
I don't
Our
have the
problem is we don't have
estimates for
a
that.
number for separation of them right now. They gave us a number for both parks.
Authorize $15,000. I'm sure that would take care of Freedom Park.
If you want to be on the safe side to just, as we bifurcate the issue, you could allocate the $20,000 with allocating it for one park with the authorization to expand it.
Allocate $20,000, up to $20,000 for Freedom Park.
Second.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment prior to the vote. I took a tour 2.5 weeks ago after the Freedom Park incident. So I took a tour of Pioneer Park, then I went over with the sheriffs and looked at Freedom Park, and then from there, I did something that I hadn't done, and I'm sorry that I hadn't done it, was I went to the sheriff's station, and I took a look at a little tour of what the sheriffs were actually seeing. And I was truly surprised of how good the cameras were, and I was very much surprised that we didn't have one in a position to catch the faces. I think that I would recommend that all of us take a time and go over to the sheriff's station. Took me 15 minutes at the sheriff's station, and you understood where we were going with that. And so with that, I am going to be totally supportive of the motion, so I'll call for a vote. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing no one here, it's oh man, it's 3 in favor, 1 recusal, and 1 absence. Okay, for $20,000. Okay. Okay, and now you're going outside?
So just to clarify, I think it's the right decision to be conservative to ensure there's no conflict of interest. And Jeff and I talked about that. There's also the consideration as to whether a camera actually changes property values. And so we'll take a look at that question in general, because we're going to be having this conversation again with some other technology or some other improvement. And we just want to make sure that those who can participate.
Okay, we're going to go through the same exercise we just did. We're going to talk about Pioneer Park.
I'm just, how much money just passed?
There's $20,000 that was allocated, and under my budget authority that you approved in the budget policies, I could transfer that money to another project like that without any council authority, but I would prefer you to give direction on, we want cameras at that location.
I thought the appropriation for both Pioneer Park and Freedom Park was $20,000?
It was, but the discussion was centered around what was the dollar amount to do them at the other park. We didn't bifurcate the costs, so I can't give a cost estimate without going through documents to tell you how much we needed. So I asked, just allocate the full 20, and if right now you decide we'd like you to install, give me direction to put the cameras in the other park, I have the authority to transfer a portion of that funding to that other park and accomplish both parks without allocating additional money to it.
Which other park are you referring to?
Right now we have Freedom Park that was allocated $20,000, and the authorization you'd be asked to motion would be to install cameras in Pioneer Park.
Okay.
Do you want to make a motion, or?
Well, as previously mentioned, I think 20,000 is great for those two parks, but Lone Hill Park, I also would like to see included in this. I don't think that being reactionary is smart, and I think we should be proactive. I also think, in terms of priority, someone was murdered in one of our parks. So I understand and I equally value Freedom Park and its priority, and I want to see that done. But while we're doing it, I think we should also address and finish Pioneer Park, and I think we should also address Lone Hill Park.
Okay,
So
let's address Lone Hill Park when John's back into the room.
Yeah, because it'll all be,
Sure. Okay.
all right?
If I may offer an alternative so that the entire council can actually participate in the conversation.
I'll appropriate $100,000 for camera projects, and you figure it all out.
I was mentioning exactly that. We're going to the specific. We're going right into the weeds of saying, please install a camera at this specific location. And I think the context of the policy discussion is we want to enhance security at our parks by leveraging technology. And so one direction that the council could take, where all of you can have the conversation, is we'd like to proceed immediately with high-risk areas of installation of cameras, and we're allocating a specific dollar amount. And city staff come back with a policy and a program to implement this across the entire system of parks, leveraging whether it's camera or other technology to enhance public safety, and then let us just analyze it internally and then bring back a project for the entire council to consider without picking apart a specific location and determining, let's be safe and not have you in that conversation on that one versus that one. That's an approach you can take.
I understand what Ryan's saying, but I don't want to see a delay in Pioneer Park or Freedom Park. I want them to move forward. How do we do this?
I think the sentiment is clear to staff, what the desire is. I think the question really is, if you give us the money and give us the direction to be thoughtful in the process, we can implement it.
Okay, I think John needs to be in for this conversation.
I agree.
Gary has his hand up.
Gary, it's past your bedtime.
I was listening to so I heard everything.
I just have one question, and maybe Chris could answer this. I know Chris has explained some of the things to me. Excuse me. But I have to be honest, I'm not tech smart as far as cameras are concerned. But one of the things I was wondering is there a way, especially at Freedom Park, where we have a lot of volunteers, where we can actually monitor what's going on in the park ourselves as members? And if so, if that costs more money to do that, then our organization would address that issue as far as the board is concerned. Because I know, like with the flock cameras, the sheriff's department can monitor those. Is there some way that, in particular, that location, and I don't know about any other location, but we might be willing to pay that additional cost, and then we wouldn't have the requirements that the city would have as far as storing that?
If I may address that.
Yes, please.
Two parts to that. Technologically, yes. We can create a way for the video to be streamed so somebody or anybody, everybody, somebody, anybody, a portion of somebody can see it. Policy-wise, it's really a question on the council. And so what Mr. Enderle raises is an interesting question. Folks, you could allocate the money to create the program and then hand that program over to another organization to monitor it, so that we're no longer a part of that, and therefore it's no longer a city program and city and government code requirements to retain the video. But that's a very significant policy shift. You could also do what many cities do around the coast. People want to watch the Eagle Cam, so they stream the video of the Eagle Cam on the internet to everybody, because it's a public space with the camera shooting at a public area, so what do we care if the whole world gets to see it, but that the video is still retained by the city in its city program. So it really is up to the council if that kind of capability is something you want to include in our policy.
Do we have a prosecution problem with that? I guess that would be to the captain with the way we do it if we put it out there to the vast community. I was going to ask the captain, but I saw you move your hand.
Sorry, I thought you were going in a different direction. I was going to say that if we were to turn the video over to a private organization, we would not necessarily, that private organization would have to be able to keep us from getting it back. In other words, it wouldn't be the city's property anymore. And that could potentially happen. I'm not saying it would, but it could potentially happen if we're handing that video over to a private organization.
Right, we'd have to subpoena it, basically, or the sheriff's department or the DA would have to subpoena or get a warrant for it if, for whatever reason, it was unavailable.
So for that policy, I think that is in line with developing a policy. I don't think we could decide right this moment about whether we want to do that, but that should be something covered in whatever report or discussion or analysis you do.
All right, so I agree with Mr. Enderle's concept of being able to do it. I think conceptually, as you proposed, I've seen other cities do that where they stream public spaces. I would move that the city council appropriates $50,000 total for public safety improvements to its city parks, specifically related to this issue of security cameras, prioritizing Freedom Park and Pioneer Park, and then looking at other areas where there is a public safety concern and further creating an implementation plan to execute as well as develop policy surrounding the implementation of those cameras in consultation with the city attorney and the sheriff's department.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Given the weird recusal rules, do we need to do that without mentioning a park by name somehow?
No, we kind of talked about it while you were out of the room, but there was a discussion about allocating dollars towards technology and cameras in all parks as a whole, giving staff the authority to prioritize those. And so in that way, it's more of a citywide item.
That's why I had to think gingerly about it.
Yeah.
May I repeat the motion just to make sure I captured it correctly?
I just want to ask a question about the motion. Okay, it's $50,000, and you're prioritizing Freedom Park and Lone Hill Park, or not Lone Hill, Pioneer Park. But in your prior statements, you voiced the opinion of Lone Hill should be prioritized.
I do believe Lone Hill should be prioritized, but that is why I surmised it with saying public safety needs throughout the system, and I would assume that a Part 1 crime like murder would be a good example of a public safety priority in a park.
So at this point, the initial $50,000 are going to cover $20,000 for the two parks in question that we've already, you've broken down, but the staff's already broke down on what it's going to cost. So additionally, they would have, at this point, $30,000 to look at Lone Hill Park and come up with a number. And if that number is higher, they could come back and ask us about.
Or Ladera Serra Park, or
whatever park that they deem
whatever,
is where the crime is.
Whatever they feel is appropriate.
I think we're on the same page here, and staff is understanding where we're going, and so, yeah.
If I may just repeat the motion just to make sure I captured this correctly. There was a motion by Councilmember Vienna, seconded by Councilmember Bertone, to appropriate a total of $50,000, which obviates the original $20,000, for public safety improvements to city parks, prioritizing Freedom and Pioneer Park. Then look to install camera systems in other parks based on safety needs. create an overall execution plan for technology deployment in our city parks, and establish a policy governing technology use in consultation with the city attorney.
And the Sheriff's Department.
And the Sheriff's Department.
So during that policy conversation, we'll address, after you've had talk with the Sheriff's Department and city attorney and stuff, we'll address Mr. Enderle's concern or his request for having some type of access.
Yeah, I think we'll look at the best practices that were attached in others and look very broadly. I think providing streaming capability isn't that difficult because while you're appropriating $50,000 right now for the installation and the one-time costs, this would have to build in ongoing costs of internet connectivity, storage, and whatnot, which we'll build into the budget as we move forward. But all of that, including streaming, will be something we consider in the policy.
If the cameras that the city elects to use for the purposes of the public safety initiative is higher quality or whatever the case may be, but may not be able to stream, I'm not opposed to a different camera that has that capability with a web server to be able to provide that functionality so that the public could be able to see that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
If I may reframe it, basically, providing streaming capability would have a higher priority than quality. If that's the case, I would just ask to the extent that it doesn't degrade.
No. What I'm saying is if the cameras that provide the best quality and service for what we're trying to achieve in public safety are not able to stream, then I don't have an issue from my seat if you buy another camera, like a +1 camera, that provides that functionality so that we can facilitate the public's interest in that.
Understood. So install the system the way we're doing it for public safety, and if we need an added component to make sure it's streaming, add the component to stream it.
Correct. That's.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't know if anyone else is okay with that.
No, I don't have a problem with that, but I would like to make sure that in our conversations with the Sheriff's Department and the city attorney, that this has no effect on prosecution of, I don't want to allow, outside of the city or the sheriffs if it's going to have an adverse effect on prosecution.
I think the evidentiary standards, we would work with the sheriff's office to make sure that those meet what they need to prosecute.
Yeah, I absolutely have no problem with them viewing it or anything like that, but I don't want to have a crime occur and then all of a sudden, because of, our way we're letting, it streamed, it'd be tragic to have a major crime occur and us not be able to prosecute it. So
when we operationalize this, the priority is going to be to move quickly to make the installations and not delay it for the purposes of the policy and secondary pieces. The streaming will be important, but not as important to get the cameras up that will be used to prosecute.
Yeah, and as I understand it, the cameras that we're talking about right now are very high definition. They're actually a higher standard than the current cameras at Pioneer Park, so they should be good. They should be good as far as the exposure and that we're going to get. I think that the Sheriff's Department was very excited about the thought of us putting this a better camera in at both Freedom Park and at.
And you raise a good point. We have installed cameras. The newer ones may be higher quality. We would have to, at some point, then return back to the old cameras that are already installed and upgrade them. But the priority would be expanding the net of safety first and then return as part of the plan to the replacement and maintenance cycle of the cameras throughout all of our parks.
Super. All right. We have a
call the question, sir.
Yep. We have a motion and second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it passes 4-0, 4-1 absence.
Thank you. I stayed up here to thank you all for taking a look at this, not just installing the camera, but the possibility to stream it. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You can go home and go to bed now. Okay, we'll move to item B. Approve a resolution 2021-43 expressing strong concern in the directives of District Attorney George Gascon, and to approve a vote of no confidence in his ability to protect San Dimas residents. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On May 25th, the council requested that we bring forward a staff report to be able to have discussions regarding the district attorney's new directives. In that, in the follow-up to that, we had the discussion at the June 22nd meeting. We sent out invitations to key representatives that would have brought good information and perspective to the city council with regards to the impacts associated with those directives. And so we had the undersheriff that was invited that spoke before the council, an experienced deputy district attorney who has seen firsthand prosecutions of crimes, and then invited the district attorney himself or a representative from his office. On the day of the meeting, we received a cancellation from the district attorney's office themselves, so we only had 2 of those 3 speakers speak to the council. The council heard a lot of testimony, and the council then directed staff to return with a resolution of no confidence, and in giving that direction, provided a number of different elements that they wanted to see in the resolution. Now, mind you, you can write this in many different ways, and so I took one approach to try to integrate the best I could, the different pieces that council members had provided. Also to write it in a way that didn't copy other cities, but was very unique to what the council wanted for San Dimas. And so what you see on the board right now and in your agenda packet is the language itself. And so the direction from council that we're asking for is give us direction on, do you want to approve this? Do you want to make amendments to this? Or do you want to take a completely different approach? And with that, I'll return it to you, Mr. Mayor.
I think the approach is fine. I mean,
Yeah, I've read it, and I have no problems with it at all.
I like it. There was one paragraph that I wanted to see if we could strengthen a little bit.
We're at.
And I'll tell you, and I believe we have a Word document on the screen, and so I wouldn't mind having an alternative to the first, at the top of page 2 of the resolution, which is page 483 in the staff.
which page number is it in our book?
Page 483. So at the very top, I think that whereas combines prioritizing victims and the rehabilitation of the offender part, and I think it would be clearer if we separate those two into 2 whereases. So my proposal, and John, are you going to be typing or, okay, don't get rid of anything there. You can copy the whole thing if you want to, because a lot of it is the same, but I don't want to get rid of the original so we can compare it. So so do you want to copy that so we can put it right there? Yeah, that's great. Okay. So the first whereas would be, whereas the City Council of the City of San Dimas prioritizes, put an S at the end of prioritize, just to, at the end of prioritize, you need an S so it matches the number, City Council. Prioritizes victims, and then this is what I would add to end this whereas, and supports strong enforcement. Now, we could add enforcement of laws. Let's leave it at that for just a moment, and then do the semicolon and then make another whereas for the rest, which I would like to make a change to.
Six of one and a half dozen of another. It's fine with me.
Yeah, well, listen to the way it's going to read after we, so you do an and then another whereas. So John, I'm separating this into 2 whereases. perfect, whereas. And we don't need balance. This would start out with the same kind of wording, the City Council of the City of San Dimas. In other words, the sentence above was hard for me to understand what it was actually saying, prioritizes victims and balance reasonable. I wasn't getting the, that was one, everything else is great. This is the one part I wanted to make a little bit clearer. Okay, so in the second whereas, that's the first whereas. The second whereas there is the City Council of the City of San Dimas.
Mr. Councilmember Ebner, Councilmember Ebner and I discussed the change that was going to be proposed. Is it the same change we were?
Yeah.
So, John, I just sent you the language already drafted. If you could take a look and cut it and paste it in this place, and then we can just read through that and make sure it's actually accurate. And so the language that I had was, whereas the City Council of the City of San Dimas prioritizes victims and supports strong enforcement, and whereas the City Council of the City of San Dimas supports verifiably effective rehabilitation programs that reform and reintegrate offenders into society as healthy, productive members in the community, and in a manner that does not result in a continuing hazard to the community, and the remaining part.
Correct. So the main change here is separating the two things so we don't confuse or combine a support for victims with what we're talking about with offenders. That's the first goal, is to make it clear, because there are two different thoughts here. And the second one, I liked adding just this thing about as healthy, productive members of the community, because that is the goal that we talked about anyway, or I talked about at the meeting. When they come out, they've got to be healthy, they've got to be productive, and they can't pose a danger. I think that is worthy of a whereas, and other than that,
I would move approval of Resolution 2021-43 expressing strong concern in the directives of District Attorney George Gascon, and to approve a vote of no confidence in his ability to protect San Dimas residents, incorporating all amendments as stated by Councilman Ebner and reviewed by the City Manager.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We need a reading of this resolution. Okay. Thanks, John, for taking a look at that.
Yeah, thank you. Those were good.
Okay. I think we can move on to the goal line update. Sherry Garwood. Sherry's our Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. This evening, Steve Barragon, our engineering manager, will give you a presentation.
Good evening, all. Like Sherry mentioned, I'm Steve Barragon, the engineering manager, and I just want to provide a brief update on the construction of the Gold Line project. We go on to the next slide, please. As we're all aware, the train is coming. It's been almost a year since this project broke ground for construction, and there's been some significant amount of activity throughout the almost 2-mile stretch that's in San Dimas. But it's becoming more noticeable now that the construction activity is increasing, especially near our downtown area, and especially in the areas where we have railroad crossings, which is where our roadways intersect the tracks. If you don't mind going to the next slide, please. Now, this slide shows the 7 locations where we have these crossings, but in the interest of time, I just want to highlight the areas where there's currently construction activity ongoing. So if you focus on, at the time that we wrote the report for this item, the location that's labeled as number 2, which is the Euclid Avenue crossing between Bonita and 2nd Street, was under construction and the roadway was closed. But since then, the contractor has actually completed the improvements ahead of schedule, and that roadway was reopened on Friday. Now, if we move further to the east, which is to the right on the screen, the location labeled as number 6 is the Walnut Avenue crossing, which has been closed for almost a month between Bonita and Arrow Highway. The contractor has been focusing on the utility undergrounding in that area, and there's also other improvements that will be ongoing. And that crossing is scheduled to be reopened in mid-November. Now, if we go back towards the middle of the screen, the item that's located labeled as number 3 is the Bonita Cataract intersection. Now, not to belittle any of the other work that's going on at all the crossings, because each one of them has its own challenges, but Bonita Cataract is a little bit more complex. If you don't mind going to the next slide, please. So this intersection, due to the size of the intersection, the alignment, and the fact that the tracks go through the intersection at an angle, and the proximity to the downtown business district are just a few to name in regards to the complexity of this intersection. But for this particular intersection, the Goal Line Authority went above and beyond to work with city staff on creating a 4-phase construction approach for this intersection, which has currently been underway. If you don't mind going to the next slide. We are currently under the phase 2 of this intersection. So this intersection, the phase 2 allows for the movement of traffic in all directions, but it also allows the contractor to begin on the construction of the bridge by working on the abutments, which are the approaches to the bridge. But in doing so, the only difference is that they had to realign the eastbound Bonita traffic onto what is the proposed aligned improvements at the south west corner of that intersection. And if you don't mind going to the next slide, this actually gives you a better image of what the proposed alignment is ultimately. The darker lines show the new alignment of that intersection. And as I had mentioned, the southwest quadrant, which is the lower left corner of that intersection, the contractor actually completed those improvements in anticipation for this phase 2, which, like I mentioned, allows them to start the construction of the bridge. And the next slide, as you all know, this is a rendering of what the finished product is supposed to look like for the bridge at that intersection. Now, in addition to the work that's been going on at all the crossings, there's been other work between the crossings, which we refer to as the mid-block. Now, that work is going to be ongoing until the completion of this project. But there's also other street improvements that need to take place. And if you don't mind going to the next slide, this actually shows north of the tracks, there's some street widening that needs to occur on San Dimas Avenue to improve, to provide capacity for additional traffic movements in the area. Now, the southeast quadrant, which is the lower right corner of the screen, those improvements have already been completed. And the contractor, within the next month or so, is supposed to work on the improvements at the northwest quadrant, which is the upper left corner of that intersection. Now, if we move further south of the tracks, on the other side of the tracks, on the next slide, please. You can't see the roadway, but the roadway is shown on the far right side. That's the San Dimas Avenue, and then on the bottom of the screen is commercial, and the tracks being on the top of the screen. Now, I know that this is showing a conceptual landscape plan, but the purpose of showing this image is to focus on the fact that another improvement that will be taking place within the next month or two. The contractor will be relocating the entrance to the park and ride, which is currently off of San Dimas Avenue. It's going to be relocated off of Commercial. And then I just want to clarify that this is independent of where the parking is for the goal line. This is a requirement from the California, the CPUC, I'm sorry. And then in addition to that, since we're focused in this area, how could I forget to even mention the fact that the intersection of Commercial and San Dimas Avenue, the traffic signal was put into operation about a week and a half ago. And that concludes my updates of the construction goal line, but I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
How long do you think it's going to take for them to relocate or the entrance onto commercial? What do you think that time delay is going to be?
They currently have it scheduled on their proposed construction schedule for a month and a half.
Steve, I know it's late in the game here, and this is for Sherry as well, and staff. The entrance on San Dimas Avenue, is that, did the CPU, what was the logic on that? Is it predicated on bus movements into the parking lot or car movements?
It's actually both. So the logic is for the tracks that are actually on the north side, they need to have a physical barrier for the first, I believe it's 100, 150 feet. So that extends the median south, and that actually blocks the entrance into the park and ride, would make it only a right in and right out. And then since we have buses going in there, that most of them come from Arrow Highway, they need to make a left into there. With that barrier, they would not be allowed to. So that's the reasoning for the relocation off of Commercial. And that's how we also got the signal at Commercial and San Dimas to allow for those movements into that new relocated entrance.
Another concern for the CPUC is any potential backing up of traffic across the tracks. So as a car goes southbound on San Dimas Avenue, if they were to enter the driveway, they slow down as they make that corner, and it backs up traffic it has a potential of backing up traffic on the tracks.
So I feel this is obviously just spitting in the wind because it's so late in the game, but there are other solutions to everything you talked about. The foothill buses, assuming they still want to stop there, and that's a question in and of itself, could easily be routed through on Bonita and then make that right turn southbound on San Dimas Avenue, and there's a little parking lane or whatever you want to call it already on the map there, but that could be enhanced to be the place where buses pick up passengers. Secondly, in a similar way, and maybe it doesn't have to be right there, maybe it's farther along, I mean, I don't know. Secondly, the turning movement of the cars into the parking lot, as you said, there could be a lane for that turning so they can get out of the way of traffic going south. The signal at Commercial, I don't know if you remember, but originally the signal, even on the model, was at that driveway. On the model that the Gold Line provided, it was at that driveway. When I brought up that's pretty close to the tracks, Gold Line, and wouldn't it be better to have a signal at Commercial where it would do some other things, other benefits? They said, okay, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Now, conversation didn't go quite that way, but that's the signal's on Commercial, which is a good place to have it. I'm just concerned that driveway is being closed and a whole bunch of traffic is being routed in that driveway, and for any number of reasons, cars going into the neighborhood, the person who lives in that house right next to that driveway having these buses going in and out of the driveway there, and then the detraction, whatever we put as a scenic barrier of some kind behind the Veterans Monument, the detraction from that monument of this highly traveled roadway are all reasons that I wish we would have caught this earlier, and just like with these other things we keep talking about, insisted that the people in charge listen to some alternatives or give us some ideas. I mean, they've listened to other things. The Monte Vista underpass, for example, used to be narrower. Again, was at the headquarters one day and said, do you know that they've got forklifts that go back and forth from the San Dimas Green? And so they made it wider. It's still not wide enough, in my opinion, but it's it's a little bit better. So, you know, if we had caught it earlier, so I'm just a little frustrated with that. That driveway came to my attention anyway just about a month ago. I mean, I didn't even know it was there, and that was a little, anyway, just venting. So there you go.
Hi, how you doing? Would you like to say something, sir?
Yes, I have a couple questions on this.
As soon as they're finished with this, I'll let you come up and talk and ask your questions, okay? When the staff has completed with their... Okay, any further questions of the staff? I spoke too soon. Please, sir.
The alley goes right outside my bedroom, so, and I found out about it accidentally at the City Hall meeting we had last week.
Which alley are you referring to, sir?
Pardon?
The alley, which alley?
My commercial.
Okay, right there, right behind
that's Freedom Park, and my house is on the other side of the alley to be.
Yes, sir.
All right. Get conflicting things on this. The distance is supposed to be 100 feet or it's 150 feet. What's the right number? 100? 100, okay, that's good. Is it 100 feet from the station or is it 100 feet from the tracks? From what? Yeah, see, I don't understand that. 100 feet from the right-of-way, then that's going to be a problem on Walnut. That's going to be a problem on Euclid. So, I can understand that this would be a distance from the station, but I don't understand that this is a distance from the right-of-way. If it's from the right-of-way, then the driveways on the other side of San Dimas Avenue, you know, where they go into the work live areas and come out, that'll be too close. The first exit onto the CVS parking lot will be too close. The exit going into the south side of Bonita will be too close. It just doesn't make sense. Sherry?
So the driveway, the first driveway south into CVS has actually been closed. So that was closed. So the concern is when you have a car slowing down to go into a driveway, it backs vehicles up behind them, especially on southbound San Dimas Avenue, where you only have one lane going southbound. So driveways, the driveway north of the tracks on southbound San Dimas doesn't back vehicles up when it turns into it. So that south driveway into our municipal parking lot.
Excuse me, Sherry?
Yes.
Sir, I think it would probably be better served that you, Sherry, get together with you and talk to you and get your concerns, because quite honestly, I think you have a very interesting concern, and I'd like to hear a little more from Sherry after she totally understands what your concerns are.
This is not a surprise. This came up at the town hall meeting. I don't think any of us quite understand the bottleneck that we are creating on San Dimas Avenue. Metro has said 200 trains per day. They will not be spread over 24 hours. It'll be mostly 12 hours. That's 3.5 minutes between trains. Rush hour, it's going to be more. You're looking at about 3 minutes between train. And you've got to allow the train to clear the crossing. You've got to have the crossing drop and come up. The two things take about a minute. You're talking about almost no time during the rush hour that this street's going to be open. And the other crazy idea coming out of the meeting last week was to move the park and ride for the Gold Line over to the park and ride for the buses. And I think I'm the first person to recommend that back 15 years ago. It was a bad idea then. It's a worse idea today. At least back then we were talking about the park and ride being on the same side as the station. Look at this thing. We're going to have 450 people walking across the street with the trolley going every 3 minutes and all these people walking across. It will never be open. The parking lot has got to go where it was. At that meeting, we did a straw poll. 2 people liked the idea of moving the park and ride facility to the bus park and ride. About 130 said, no way. And this is what's always been. We've been debating this for 15 years. And during that time, we looked at every imaginable alternative, and we always come back to the same thing. Parking lot has to go on the east side. And if you have the parking lot on the east side, more people are going to use that. You have less congestion on San Dimas. The other thing that has to happen, and I don't know how this came about, but originally the station was farther back, closer to Walnut, about halfway between the two. And the advantage of that is it encourages people to use the new park and ride coming off of Arrow and coming off of Walnut and leaving San Dimas open. The farther we could put that park and ride, the station back, the better it's going to be. We're looking at huge congestion here, and we're setting up something that's probably going to be in place for another century. We've already agreed with Metro to put the parking lot where the parking lot needs to go. But we need to go back and talk to Metro and say, all right, guys, can we push this station back some 50 feet or so? And if really the number, and Sherry and I will check it out, and I'll call the state about this. If it's really from the station rather than from the right-of-way, then moving the station back 150 feet clears up this intersection and all of the others related to it. So it's just really a good thing to do. Thank you for your indulgence.
I appreciate your input, and I would hope that Sherry and you can sit down and talk about it, because I certainly understand some of the things that you're saying. So if you would, please, and
I shall be happy to, and I'd like to point out that even though I have a vested interest in that, it's really in my best interest to go ahead with the park and ride. I've been there for 21 years. Cars come in the morning, they go somewhere. Buses come back in the evening, the cars go somewhere. They're wonderful neighbors. I kind of like to keep it that way, but it's just crazy to create this bottleneck on San Dimas. Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Any other further questions of staff? Yeah, I do want to make a comment that earlier today I received a call from a fellow mayor and a fellow in a city who cautioned me that sometimes the goal line isn't right, isn't real fair and honest and whatever, whatever words. He cautioned us to not underpark, because it's just not good business. Because every city, from where it started to where we are at now and where it's going to go, is complaining about underparking, and that once it's done and once the parking's done, then we have a problem. And that's Azusa, Glendora's concerned about it now. And I think we need to be concerned about it also.
I think you're absolutely right, but the problem with parking doesn't come from the gold line. It comes from Metro, who's the one that's handing down, saying you don't have the 2 or 3 story, and you have to cut the amount of parking spaces. So Metro is really the villain in this, and they're the ones that want us to charge for parking, which are going to make people want to park on the streets.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it's a no-win situation for us at this point. We're going to be the villains here because of, at the end of the day, try to get a hold of somebody at Metro and complain. So, Chris, you got something to say?
No, I was just raising that we're crossing into the boundaries of an agenda item that's not agendized.
Good. All right. Okay, we'll move on to the city manager report.
I think there's an oral communication right prior to this report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to get out of here. Oral communications. Members of the audience, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. It may be determined if the subject's interesting of the chair. Anyone have anything to say, or anybody like to come up and say something? I don't see anybody move in this direction. So now we'll move on to city manager's report. It has an SB 9 verbal.
No significant action on this yet. That ends my report.
So that's the end of your report? City attorney?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Members of the city council. Council members' reports on meeting attended at the expense of the local agency. Seeing none. City council requests for future items, comments, and updates. John.
I'm ready. Only one thing, and that's to announce that there is going to be a Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, the first in about 9 or 10 months, this coming Tuesday, a week from tonight. That's July 20th at 6 p.m. We have a full commission roster now of 7 members, and staff is preparing material for a good meeting. It is not streamed or televised, but the public is welcome to attend and encouraged to attend and comment on anything that is within the purview of the Parks and Recreation Commission. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm glad to see the meetings are reopening.
What time?
6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 20th.
It'll be in this conference room.
You know, I'm not sure. Scott, I'm not sure where Scott's going to put it. It's been over in the senior center. Yes. Oh, there's Scott. Oh, we're doing the conference room here.
Conference room. Okay.
Right. Conference room here at City Hall.
Okay. Thank you. Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the San Gabriel Valley Vector and Mosquito Control District meeting recently, and some really exciting news about the West Nile case, first one of the year in South Pasadena, and a dead crow. So make sure that you're taking all your precautions. And on my social media on Facebook or Twitter, I think I shared the insect repellents that work most effectively. So, do what you got to do to protect yourself. And other than that, Saturday I attended the Mighty Mites opening day at Pioneer Park. I was there with the mayor, and I missed some staff, but I also did see some of our other staff present. And I just wanted to say to the Parks and Rec staff, they did a great job with that event, and it was really cool watching the kids kind of do their thing. Councilman Weber's son was quite energetic. He's playing for the A's, and be interesting season. There's a lot of potential going on in a lot of these kids. So anyways, needless to say, good production, good times, and I hope everybody had a good 4th of July. And lastly, everyone knows, if you follow my stuff, it's Shark Week. So this is 2 council meetings that we did on Shark Week. We're going to have to talk about this next year. Well, who knows? I don't even know if I'm going to be here next year. So maybe I'll get a reprieve. Needless to say, happy Shark Week, everyone.
Yes?
Just one point here. This is about our housing element. I happen to do my shopping at Vons and Villa Verde, and so I've been doing it for years, so I know some of the people up there that work there, and 2 of them came up to me today and say, well, why is the city closing this Vons and going to put homeless housing here? And I convinced them that we weren't putting homeless housing, and the audience should know that we're not putting homeless housing anywhere in the city, and we're not putting homeless housing in Vons, and we're not closing Vons. And if Vons, we don't have the power to close Vons, even if we wanted to, it has to be a willing seller. But we are not putting homeless housing in as far as our housing element goes. And I think we should really make sure that people realize this, because I understand there's a couple people that are really spreading the rumor that homeless housing is going in San Dimas, which is not true at all. We will deal with our homeless, but we're not putting in homeless housing in.
Thank you, Dennis. That's very, very, very good. And thanks for clarifying that. Councilman Weber is actually on a plane coming down. He didn't send a message or anything, so we're going to assume that he has nothing to say at this point except welcome home. I, too, attended the Mighty Mites opening day. It was quite fun. There was a lot of kids. Kids are having fun. Parents are stressing. They look at their son, they're going to first base, he's running off to the restroom. So it was really pretty interesting. And yes, Councilman Weber's son was there and having fun. Councilman Weber wasn't there, but I looked up and I saw Southwest Airlines, and I didn't see a sign or banner going across saying, "Way to go, Cole." So, but I'm sure he was thinking about it. Just to go along with what Dennis said, I happened to be at a dentist appointment this morning in Villa Verde, and I'm in the chair being worked on, and I'm listening to this lady in the next booth being worked on, telling about how fact she came to a council meeting here, or to this meeting we had last night. She said it was pretty entertaining. It was kind of funny. She really didn't say a lot, but the one thing I heard her say is they kept just saying the word potential. They kept saying it. This is a potential site. This is it. Villa Verde is Bonds is a potential site, which means in my world, it's going to happen. Okay? I want to make sure everybody, just like Dennis said right now, the word potential doesn't mean it's a done deal. We are far, far away from any type of, any type of agreement on it. I think all 5 councilmen are very much aware of the fact that the community is concerned. They're concerned about this homeless issue. And if you read the notice that the city sent out, a courtesy notice, there's not one word in there that indicates the word homeless. So it's a process and that's going on, and we, the city, have to do it because we're being told to by the state. So please give us a chance. Please give the community a chance to have their input. Give the staff a chance to out their outreach, and we'll see where it's going. So please, understand that this is not something being driven by the city of San Dimas. Okay, I have nothing more to say. I just want to remind everyone that we did have a closed session tonight, but it's been continued to 2 weeks from tonight when all 5 councilmen are going to be here. All right, so I entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? Good night.